Chapter 1387. Pucci. A black blade that could cut open the earth fell from the sky. It was like a sharp flash of light that cut through space, bringing about a clear ripping sound and a burst of crimson blood. The blood splattered on the ground and dyed it red, forming a pool of blood. The air was filled with traces of blood that were difficult to detect. Under such circumstances, a phantom retreated at extreme speed. It was like a ray of light that flashed backward until it was a distance away from the three-headed dragon. It then stopped and revealed Noah's figure. However, as soon as his figure appeared, Noah's body immediately went limp and he knelt on the ground with one knee. Drip. Drip, the sound of water droplets slowly reverberated in the air. It was the sound of blood dripping from Noah's body as he knelt on the ground with one knee on the ground. Upon closer inspection, from Noah's shoulder to the side of his abdomen, a huge wound was branded in front of Noah's body. It was as if Noah's body was cut diagonally in half. A large amount of blood flowed out from the wound and slowly dyed the ground red. Cough. Noah involuntarily coughed out a mouthful of blood. The intense pain in front of him caused him to involuntarily clench his teeth. He forcefully swallowed the sweetness that surged up his throat. His eyes stared intently at the three-headed dragon, which was emitting a violent aura. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. What's with that body? It was no wonder that Noah would ask such a question. The three-headed dragon's body was simply too inconceivable. So far, Noah had never encountered a situation where not only did his opponent not suffer any damage from his attack, but he, as the attacker, suffered a bitter consequence because of the reaction force. If it had been blocked or dodged, that would have been excusable. However, the three-headed dragon did not use any tricks. It only used its body to withstand Noah's attack. There was only one reason why Noah's punch did not cause any damage to his opponent and instead caused his fist to shatter. In the words of the game, it was impossible to break through its defense. The three-headed dragon's body was terrifyingly tough. Even with the blessing of LV5 ability value, a punch not only did not cause any damage to the opponent, but also hurt his own terrifying hard body because of the reaction force. Perhaps the three-headed dragon had seen through this point and purposely endured Noah's attack. Then, when Noah suffered the consequences of his own actions, it launched a surprise attack, intending to kill Noah in one fell swoop. Just now, if Noah had not used the phoenix's speed to retreat at the critical moment, that shadow blade would not have simply cut open Noah's chest, but would have cut Noah's entire body into two. Is this the real Demon King? The Demon Kings in the box court referred to the Asura gods and Buddhas who abused the authority of the organizer. However, the three-headed dragon was not that kind of existence. Humans in the final trial were all born as Demon Kings. There was no need to abuse the authority of the organizer to become a Demon King. Resisting the intense pain in his body, Noah clenched his teeth and stood up with difficulty. He took a deep breath and chanted a new language. Noble and intelligent, elegant and beautiful, I praise your life. Here you are one with nature. The outline of the 10 figures connected to the avatar suddenly turned and pointed to the figure of the elf. A fluorescent light like starlight flickered from Noah's body and covered his entire body. Under that beautiful starlight, Noah's hideous wounds and cracked fists healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Noah's somewhat pale face regained its rosy and healthy color. Seeing this scene, the three-headed dragon's 6 red jade-like eyes slightly flickered. Immediately, a heavy voice came from one of the three-headed dragon's heads. Undoubtedly, you are a human. How can you wield the power of a god like this? The sudden voice stunned Noah for a moment, then he understood what was going on. The three-headed dragon spoke. So that's how it is. Noah endured the pain and recovered as he spoke mockingly. Thinking about it, how could the evil god of the sect of fire not know how to speak? So that frightening roar from before was just a bluff? That's just to raise my monstrous nature. Since you're a monster, there's no need for you to use human language. The three-headed dragon opened its ferocious mouth and said as if it was mocking and sneering at the same time. However, there is only you and me here, so there is no need to be so stubborn. Moreover, the power you use gives me a familiar feeling, making me want to devour you. It is really strange, for thousands of years, as a demon king wreaking havoc in this world, this is the first time I have had such a feeling, so I couldn't help but want to speak a little. Saying this, the three-headed dragon's 3 heads and 6 eyes stared closely at Noah and let out a low roar. Answer me. Human hero. Why do you have the power of my enemy in your body? The three-headed dragon saw through the part of the god of victory's power that Noah used, which was the power of the god of victory. Or rather, it was strange that the three-headed dragon did not recognize the power of the hateful enemy god that had once reduced him to a captive. However, in the face of the three-headed dragon's low roar that seemed like a tornado, Noah's reply was rather relaxed and cheerful. Isn't the so-called grace a power bestowed by various Asura gods and Buddhas? Then it's not strange for me to have the power bestowed by a god, is it? No, if it was only bestowed power, it would be impossible for it to reach such strength. Moreover, rather than saying that your power was bestowed, it would be better to say that it was bestowed. That feeling is simply as if you are a true god. The three-headed dragon spoke extremely calmly. However, you are unquestionably a human. As a human in the final trial, I can very clearly confirm that you are a human. Then, how did you become a godlike existence? I am very curious about this. Is that so? Noah laughed coldly. I am also very curious about what's going on with your body. I am even curious about the nature of your final trial as a human. Then, can I ask you to give me an answer? Hearing this, the three-headed dragon fell silent. After a while, the three-headed dragon raised his 3 heads and spoke indifferently. You are right. What's going on is no longer important. What's important is whether I, as the challenged party, or you, as the challenger, will obtain victory in the end. After saying this, the three-headed dragon's 3 pairs of eyes flashed with an ominous glint once again. His entire body shook with a monstrous aura. I am a pillar of the fire-worship sex gods. I am the demon king Azidakaha. I am the embodiment of evil that cannot live under the same sky. The three-headed dragon's roar turned into a fatal wind wave that blew apart the atmosphere and also blew apart the earth. Moreover, the cape on his back fluttered loudly in the wind. No. That was not a cape. That was a flag. A red flag with the primitive word evil engraved on it. This flag was carried on the three-headed dragon's back like a cape and was blown away by the sound waves brought about by the roar. This flag that was carried by the three-headed dragon like a cape was embedded into the three-headed dragon's shoulder by a screw-like iron stake. The three-headed dragon also raised his 3 heads that were also pierced by the stake and let out a roar that scattered the sea of clouds and resounded through the heavens and earth. Bring it on. The human hero that I have not seen for hundreds of years. Use all your strength. Use all your wisdom. Use all your brute strength. Try to turn into a radiant sword that can pierce through my chest. I am absolute evil. Above my corpse is justice. The roar that resounded through the heavens and earth blew up a storm that shook the heavens and earth, attempting to blow Noah into pieces. However, Noah stood with his back straight. He endured the extreme storm and muttered to himself, that's right. Use all your strength, use all your wisdom, use all your brute strength. Suddenly, Noah fiercely raised his head and shot his gaze at the three-headed dragon like lightning. Against you. There is no need to go to that extent. Earth lizard. After shouting, Noah's body turned into a bullet that was shot out of the barrel. Like flashing lightning, he violently shot forward. Chapter 1388. Bang! Accompanied by the sound of the ground cracking, Noah, who had stepped on the ground, turned into a black shadow and shot towards the three-headed dragon. Under the elf incarnation's incredible recovery ability, Noah's wound that was no different from a fatal injury had already disappeared, leaving behind only blood that dyed his clothes red. His shattered fist was also restored to a perfect state under the elf's recovery ability. In less than a minute, he was able to completely recover from a near-fatal injury. It had to be said that the effect of the elf incarnation was simply like a nightmare to the enemy. However, in the face of the fully recovered Noah, the three-headed dragon simply opened its mouth and laughed without a care. So what if his recovery ability was extraordinary? So what if he was extremely difficult to deal with? No matter what kind of situation he faced, no matter what kind of enemy he faced, he would crush them with absolute power and bring them complete despair. That was the true Demon King. The more powerful the enemy was, the more despair he would feel when he knelt in front of him. Az Dakaha was standing here to bring about such despair. Come, human hero. You have the courage to face the true Demon King alone. Let me appraise you. After saying that, the dragon's shadow behind the three-headed dragon immediately twisted and turned into a huge black blade that was over 100 feet long. With a chi sound, it cut through the void, bringing with it an unparalleled wind, and fiercely chopped towards Noah's direction. The huge shadow blade swept across the sky, causing a strong wind pressure that caused even the mountains over 100 meters away to tremble slightly. It was only a simple attack, but it was actually able to reach such a level. It was indeed worthy of being a three-digit existence. This level of attack even shattered Noah's air scales that had been multiplied several times. In just one attack, Noah's body that had reached LV5 and had reached the A stage of durability and sword protection were cut open. In addition to that abnormally hard body, extreme strength, and extreme defense, just the power of one incarnation was not enough to deal with it. To what extent can the current me withstand using two avatars at the same time? Gazing at the gigantic shadow blade that tore through space, Noah closed his eyes for a moment before opening them abruptly. Since the battle with Orpheus, I'll prove how much I've improved. At this moment, the divine power in Noah's body seemed to be overturning the seas, surging crazily. Bang! Like a stormy sea, an extremely powerful storm of divine power erupted from Noah's body. At this moment, in Noah's heart, the stone plate with the 10 patterns connected to it suddenly trembled. On it, 2 patterns suddenly flashed with a dazzling light. Of the 2 designs, one was the giant. If he wanted to cause damage to the three-headed dragon's abnormally tough body, this was the only incarnation that Noah could think of. The other one was Phoenix. In the face of the three-headed dragon's extreme strength, using extreme speed to completely subdue it should be enough. Under such consideration, the giant, which symbolized Noah's greatest strength, and the phoenix, which symbolized his greatest speed, bloomed with dazzling light. Then, a violent power that was enough to burst a true giant's body, crazily surged within Noah's body. In the case of using 2 avatars at the same time, Noah's body and mind would bear an unimaginable burden. That burden, before Noah obtained the ability value, would only be able to bear it for less than 10 minutes before completely losing the ability to fight and even move. Now, with the ability value of LV5 and the blessing of the A stage durability, he was finally able to bear the burden on his body. As for the mental burden, when it attacked Noah's mind, it was blocked by a burst of light that rose sharply from within Noah's body. That burst of light was in the shape of a dragon. It was the power of the dragon's sun's sovereignty of the 12 equatorial stars. In addition to being able to summon the corresponding star beast, the sun's sovereignty could also carry out the corresponding strengthening of the inheritance. The sun's sovereignty of the Leo constellation could bring the gift of invulnerability. Such a blessing would allow the Leo constellation's sun sovereign to be immune to all blade-type attacks. Galgi was able to reflect all the weapons in the world only because he used the simulated star atlas, another cosmology, using the sun's sovereignty of the Leo constellation to summon Vishnu's 4th incarnation, the man-lion Naruhimo, to achieve this result. Therefore, the sun's sovereignty of the Leo constellation could only bring the gift of invulnerability. The sun's sovereignty of the dragon could allow the spirit to show a certain degree of amplification. However, Noah did not have the power of the spirit, which was unique to the box garden world. As a result, the amplification of the sun's sovereignty of the dragon turned into an amplification of the mysterious power in Noah's body, namely, the amplification of magic, divine power, and other such energy. And don't forget, Noah's magic that originated from the ability value did not consume the magic power in the energy source, but the magic power that was converted from spiritual power. Therefore, Noah thought, using the sun's sovereignty of the dragon to amplify the magic power that was converted from spiritual power, and then releasing the magic power to transform into spiritual power to strengthen his own spiritual power. As a result, the burden on his spiritual power was also shouldered. In other words, at this very moment, Noah truly obtained the power to use two incarnations at the same time without any burden. Wang. Suddenly, a giant appeared from Noah's body, and then suddenly shrank, like a layer of light and shadow, barely covering the outline of Noah's body. In the next second, Noah disappeared from the spot. Pung! A huge shadow blade shot over and directly landed on the ground, exploding the ground and stirring up a thick cloud of sand and gravel. In the thick cloud of sand and gravel, a phantom burst out, and with a terrifying speed, swept in front of the three-headed dragon. The three-headed dragon's expression suddenly changed. However, at this time, it was already too late to react. Noah clenched his fists tightly, and the light and shadow that covered the outline of his fist suddenly expanded, converging into a blurry giant's fist. Block it again for me to see. After saying that, Noah's fist was like an erupting volcano, with a terrifying fist wind and dense light, and heavily bombarded the three-headed dragon's abdomen. Dong! Accompanied by a deafening sound that was so heavy that it seemed to shake the world, a terrifying air current swept out from where Noah and the three-headed dragon were like a tempest. It turned into an intense impact that caused the ground in the vicinity to collapse for close to 100 meters. After that, a figure flew out from within like an arrow that had left its bow, and it rubbed against the air. Amidst the sharp sounds of the air tearing apart, it smashed apart numerous dilapidated buildings all along the way, causing debris to fill the sky. It was the three-headed dragon that was blasted away. Just like when the three-headed dragon sent Noah flying at the beginning. This time, it was the three-headed dragon's turn to be blasted away. At the same time, a phantom burst out like a meteor, easily catching up with the three-headed dragon that was smashing through the buildings along the way, and flashing under its body. In the next second, a strong and powerful kick soared into the sky, bringing along a light and shadow, and fiercely kicked the three-headed dragon's back. Pung! In the stifled sound that made people's hearts contract, the three-headed dragon, who had an abnormally heavy and hard body, was kicked into the sky by the force of the impact. The strong impact from the whole body turned into a substantial pain that attacked the three-headed dragon, causing the three-headed dragon to finally react. It flapped the wings formed by the shadow of the dragon on its back, stopping its body from soaring into the sky. However, at this moment, the three pairs of red jade-like eyes in the three-headed dragon's three heads suddenly shrank. This was because a huge fist that covered the sky, like a mirage, suddenly fell from the sky with an unimaginable speed, exploding on the three-headed dragon's body. Boom! Along with a roar that resounded through the space, the huge fist that covered the sky and the sun blasted the three-headed dragon into the ground, causing the ground to sink layer by layer. Chapter 1389. Boom! The lightning-fast giant fist of light suddenly blasted the earth, making it seem as if it had turned into fragile glass at this moment. It broke piece by piece, then sank down layer by layer, and directly fell apart. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of an explosion, hot magma gushed out from the cracks in the collapsed earth and sprinkled to the surroundings. In an instant, the entire surroundings turned into a purgatory, and even the temperature in the air suddenly rose by an unknown amount. Thus, the turbid flow formed by the magma flowed between the cracks in the earth, dyeing the space red and black. That scene was like being in the middle of a volcano. It was exceptionally shocking. And in the center of such a purgatory, a phantom of a giant stood there, its fist still in a downward bombardment posture, and its whole body was flowing with vigorous divine power. As for inside the phantom of the giant, Noah also stood there, slightly panting. Being able to exercise the power of the lightning fast, that is, the incarnation of the phoenix, originally brought a certain burden to the body. As a result, coupled with the fact that Noah was also using another incarnation at the same time, it brought a huge burden to use two incarnations at the same time. Under the combination of the two, although it was not a burden to Noah who had reached LV 5, durability, blessing, and the 12 equatorial stars, sovereign blessing of the dragon sun, it still caused a rapid loss of physical strength. Of course, it was not only physical strength that was quickly lost, but also divine power. However, the divine power accumulated in Noah's divine power source had reached a truly inexhaustible state, and no matter how fast it was lost, it could not be exhausted. In terms of physical strength, Noah also had the breathing technique that could quickly restore physical strength. Therefore, even if he kept fighting in this state, if he wanted to tire Noah out, it was absolutely impossible to do it without at least a day and a night. From the past when he used it for less than 10 minutes, to today when he had complete control of it, it was obvious how much progress Noah had made. This also proved that Noah's choice to accept Hestia's favor and become her clan member was correct. Without the blessing of LV5 durability, Noah would never be able to bear the physical burden of using 2 avatars at the same time for a long time. As for the mental burden, it was indeed thanks to the protection of the dragon's son's sovereignty, which also proved that Noah's negotiation with Galgi was correct. Now, if Noah were to challenge Orpheus again, Noah would definitely not be as pathetic as before. Unfortunately, the 3-headed dragon was even more difficult to deal with than Orpheus. At a certain moment, Noah's expression changed slightly. Under the giant phantom's fist, the ground began to tremble. Roah! With a hysterical roar, the giant phantom's fist suddenly trembled and involuntarily rose up bit by bit. If that's all you've got, that won't be able to crush the banner of evil that I bear. Heroes of the human race. Ah! With such a roar, the 3-headed dragon seemed to be holding up the sky. The veins all over its body bulged, and its 3 heads roared towards the sky, bursting out with an extremely terrifying power. It actually lifted the giant phantom's fist, which was many times larger than itself. Looking at this extremely unrealistic scene, even Noah's expression sank bit by bit. Then, a fierce light appeared on his face. I'd like to see if you can really hold on. In Noah's heart, the 2 images of the giant and the phoenix that were shining dazzlingly at the same time suddenly dimmed and was replaced by another image. The image that dimmed was the phoenix. It was replaced by the dragon emperor. Wang. The giant phantom that blotted out the sky suddenly twisted fiercely, and its entire body surged with a scarlet flame, gradually changing shape. Not long after, the giant phantom that blotted out the sky transformed into a scarlet dragon that also blotted out the sky. From head to toe, the gem-like treasures on its body flashed with a light. Boost, 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 boost. Every time a clear voice was heard from the sparkling jade, the aura of the crimson dragon's shadow that blotted out the sky would double in size. When the voice fell and no longer sounded, the scarlet dragon phantom's body had already expanded to 100 times its original size. Similarly, the power of the fist that bombarded the 3-headed dragon's body had also increased by who knows how many times. The terrifying power caused the ferocious dragon claw-like scarlet fist to suddenly sink, causing the body of the 3-headed dragon, which seemed to be able to hold up the sky with great difficulty, to also sink down heavily. Immediately, with the 3-headed dragon at the center of the enormous fist as the center, cracks like the abyss of hell spread out and were filled with scorching hot magma. The 3-headed dragon used all its strength to resist the enormous fist that had suddenly increased by who knows how many times, and the veins on its entire body bulged. Under the terrifying power that had multiplied by who knows how many times, the 3-headed dragon still seemed to be able to support the entire sky, and was able to resist the enormous fist. TSK. Noah couldn't help but be speechless. Just how ridiculous is it? You earth lizard. Noah didn't know that although the 3-headed dragon's body was only 3 meters long, its body that was only twice the size of a human's had compressed the mass of an entire continent. Therefore, when Noah's fist had previously struck the 3-headed dragon, it still hadn't caused any damage, and had instead shattered the fist. In other words, Noah was currently wrestling with an entire continent. If he didn't have the power to shake an entire continent, then he wouldn't be able to do anything to the 3-headed dragon. Then, can Noah, who used both the giant and the dragon emperor avatars, shake the continent? The answer would be revealed in the next moment. Pucci. Suddenly, a piece of muscle on the three-headed dragon's body exploded. Under the unimaginable power, although the three-headed dragon relied on its terrifying willpower to hold on, its body was the first to be unable to hold on and exploded. And all of a sudden, it seemed to have caused a chain reaction. Poochie poochie poochie. The muscles on the three-headed dragon's body exploded one after another, and thick blood splashed out and sprinkled on the ground. However, the blood that sprinkled on the ground melted into the ground, causing the soil to distort and transform into clones that were a size smaller than the three-headed dragon, roaring towards the sky. Seeing this, Noah's gaze turned cold. He had almost forgotten. This absolute evil was able to transform its own blood into a god-level clone, and could create a group of gods by itself. Go! My clones! The three-headed dragon roared as it resisted the huge fist that was covered in blood. Let's wipe out the enemy. The god-level two-headed dragon suddenly roared and rushed towards Noah's direction. A sharp glint flashed across Noah's eyes as he watched the twin-headed dragon pouncing towards him. If you can do it, then give it a try. After saying this, Noah stretched out a hand. A golden ripple like a water wave fluctuated from his side, and a knight's sword that shone like gold popped out. Tightly holding the golden knight's sword, Noah's body exploded with terrifying divine power. Boost 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 boost. The power that had been multiplied countless times was poured into the knight's sword in his hand. Pung! The knight's sword, which was shining like gold, suddenly burst out with a shocking aura. Excalibur. Holding the shining knight's sword, Noah raised it high above his head and slashed down heavily. A pillar of light that connected the heavens and the earth suddenly appeared in this area and shot toward the two-headed dragons that were pouncing toward them, completely drowning the two-headed dragons that were at the level of gods. Chapter 1390. Wang. The huge beam of light that caused the space to tremble swept straight ahead. It was like a meteor that pierced through the sky, shining with a dazzling light that was enough to burn people's eyes. It drowned the two-headed dragons that were pouncing toward it. After being multiplied by the Dragon Emperor's incarnation countless times, the two-headed dragons that were at least at the level of deities, which could definitely be ranked in the top 5, were directly annihilated in the light and turned into ashes. Under such circumstances, the light beam that pierced through the sky and the earth shot forward without slowing down, sweeping straight in the direction of the three-headed dragon that was facing the huge fist shadow. The vision in front of it was completely filled by the light beam that pierced through the sky and the earth. Looking at the huge light beam that was gradually advancing toward it that even it could not ignore, the three-headed dragon's red jade-like eyes were filled with extreme fierceness. A godhead bestowment weapon named Excalibur? Is it King Arthur's item in Celtic mythology and British legends? With this, there's no way to crush absolute evil. Saying this, the three-headed dragon's entire body erupted with a blazing radiance that resembled flames. The light was even hotter than the surrounding magma. Activate Avesta. Counteracted in turn. Simulate star map, another cosmology. The flame-like light that burst out from the three-headed dragon's body instantly turned into a curtain of light that surged in all directions like a tide. The light beam that pierced through the sky and the earth directly collided with it. Boom! An earth-shattering loud bang resounded. At this moment, a destructive force swept out from the collision of the two auroras like a storm, causing the whole world to tremble at this moment as if there was an earthquake. Dong! Finally, the earth could not bear the burden and exploded, turning into pieces of debris that were swallowed by the magma that emerged from the depths of the earth. Boom! The magma that formed an ocean made an explosive sound, setting off fiery red waves formed by hot mud that surged in all directions. The entire magma ocean suddenly expanded, submerging pieces of land in an instant. It only stopped when it surged to the towering mountains and was blocked as if it was slapping on a reef. In the center of the magma ocean, the destructive storm caused by the collision of the two auroras was still raging, forming a ring-shaped shock wave that swept to the surroundings. Thus, mixed with the magma, the shock wave that was like a flaming storm seemed to connect the heavens and the earth like ripples, spreading to a range of nearly 1,000 meters, thousands of meters, and even tens of thousands of meters. Wherever it passed, the earth was smashed into pieces and sunk into the magma ocean. That scene was like a red lotus hell that could destroy the heavens and the earth, Ordinary people simply could not imagine it. After an unknown amount of time had passed, the storm that contained destructive power gradually. What was left was only an endless ocean of magma that was blocked at the end of the mountain range. The magma ocean was still surging with waves, bringing with it the sound of exploding water, constantly rolling over and over. The capital of brilliant flames had already sunk into this ocean, and not a trace of it could be seen. Splash! At a certain moment, in a corner of the magma ocean, a huge splash exploded, revealing a figure from within. Ha! 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 The three-headed dragon with a pair of wings formed by a pitch-black dragon's shadow was suspended in mid-air, panting violently while clutching its chest. At that spot, a glowing heart had appeared out of nowhere. That was the most fatal weakness of the three-headed dragon. Noah did not know that in order to defeat the three-headed dragon, he had to attack its 3 vital points. The first was the head. The second was the shoulders. The third was the heart. And after years of fighting with other species as the Demon King, the three-headed dragon's 3 heads had already been pierced through by pile-like objects, and the flesh on its shoulders had also been twisted into screw-like stakes that sewed flags to its shoulders. Next, as long as the three-headed dragon exposed its heart and pierced through it, the existence known as the final trial of humans would die. And the way to expose the three-headed dragon's heart was to make it spit out all of its clones. As mentioned before, the three-headed dragon's clones could not be split without restraint. Every time it split, a part of its spiritual core would have to be separated. In other words, only when the spiritual core of the three-headed dragon was reduced to a certain extent as the clones split would its heart be exposed. Using a martial tool as an analogy, the three-headed dragon's clones were like the three-headed dragon's armor. Only by peeling off this layer of armor on the three-headed dragon would he be able to cause real damage to it. Now, the three-headed dragon's armor had been completely peeled off. Who would have thought that I would be forced to this extent by a mere human? While saying this, the three-headed dragon's eyes were filled with extreme excitement. As the highest trial left by the world for humans, the three-headed dragon's existence meant the extinction of humans. The final trial of humans was the result of materializing all the factors that could destroy humans. And if humans could pass this trial, they would be able to evolve and obtain the qualifications to pass the predestined apocalypse. The three-headed dragon carried all of this on its shoulders as it fought. Only humans could defeat absolute evil. Now, there was a human who had forced the three-headed dragon, who had become the final trial of humans, into this state by himself. This was unprecedented. What a pity. Such a peerless hero is still unable to crush my evil. The three-headed dragon spat out such a regret. However, it was still too early for him to express his regret. Accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a phantom shot out from the lava and appeared in front of the three-headed dragon. The three-headed dragon's body trembled as it suddenly raised its head. Immediately after, Noah, whose entire body was covered by the crimson dragon phantom, whose clothes were charred black and whose mouth had a trace of blood, entered the three-headed dragon's eyes. He was in a sorry state, and even his skin was torn apart, flowing with dark red blood. The three-headed dragon didn't even have time to react. In the next moment, the attack that contained the incarnation of the Dragon Emperor, with the support of the Phoenix's speed, swept out at a speed that could not be avoided. Poochie! A tearing sound resounded. The hand that was covered by the dragon phantom pierced through the three-headed dragon's chest and tightly grasped the glowing heart. The three-headed dragon's eyes suddenly froze. Reflected in its red jade-like eyes was the human hero who had single-handedly suppressed the final trial of humans and was covered in scars. Ha, ha. Noah met the three-headed dragon's sluggish gaze. While panting, he endured the pain in his body and spoke in a low voice. I won, Lord Demon King. After saying this, Noah tightly grasped the glowing heart in the three-headed dragon's chest and fiercely pulled it out. Poochie! Along with a thick splash of blood, the three-headed dragon's heart was pulled out of its chest by Noah. Ugh! The three-headed dragon squeezed out an unpleasant sound from its throat. Its 3 pairs of eyes trembled violently, and finally, gradually dimmed. Noah's trembling hand held the dragon's heart that was covered in blood and revealed a satisfied smile. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. The three-headed dragon's pair of eyes that had gradually lost their luster suddenly flashed with light again. In its chest, a brand new heart emerged. Roar! An angry roar that resounded through the sky. The three-headed dragon waved its sharp claws as Noah's pupils suddenly shrank. Poochie! The sharp claws pierced through Noah's abdomen and came out from behind. An indescribable pain assaulted Noah's entire body. Looking at the sharp claws that pierced through his abdomen, Noah stretched out his hand with difficulty and pressed on it. He raised his head and stared unwaveringly at the three-headed dragon. You. Why? The three-headed dragon calmly looked at Noah and softly said, "It's a pity. It's rare for a human hero whose martial prowess surpasses mine to appear. Unfortunately, it's easy to defeat me, but if you want to surpass me, strength alone is useless." The three-headed dragon looked at Noah as if it was regretting something. You won against me, but you didn't surpass the final trial. That's how it is. Leaving these words, the three-headed dragon pulled its claws out of Noah's abdomen and pushed Noah into the sea of lava. As Noah fell into the sea of lava, he looked at the three-headed dragon that was looking down at him. His consciousness gradually blurred. Then, Noah, who had lost consciousness, fell into the sea of magma and was swallowed by it. No one noticed. The moment Noah fell into the lava, the three-headed dragon's heart in his hands suddenly trembled. A tattered feather floated out and touched Noah's body. In the next second, Noah disappeared. In the pure white space, Noah, who was covered in broken feathers, suddenly appeared with a scarred Noah. Immediately after, a complete feather suddenly floated over and touched Noah's body, causing Noah to disappear once again. Chapter 1391. The morning sun shone down from the sky, illuminating the red and white iron tower that seemed to reach the clouds. This iron tower, not only in this country, but also in other countries, enjoyed a bit of a reputation. Not far from this iron tower that enjoyed a bit of fame, there were extremely complex and varied buildings. Some of these buildings were high-class restaurants, some were small and medium-sized schools, some were famous TV stations, some were radio stations, and there were even embassies nearby. However, if one were to ask what was the most abundant, it would be the shrines and temples other than residences. For some reason, there were many shrines and temples on the streets not far from the famous Iron Tower. Among them, there was a shrine at the end of a complicated path, sitting on a stone platform with more than 200 steps. It was a shrine surrounded by lush trees, surrounded by lush greenery. In front of such a shrine, a young woman was currently holding a broom, using slow and rhythmic movements to skillfully sweep the floor. The young girl was wearing a very standard witch costume, and she was about 15 or 16 years old. She had long hair that reached her waist, and it emitted a beautiful luster under the sunlight. However, the young girl's hair was not black, but a brown color that was close to coffee. The scene of a young girl with long hair that reached her waist, wearing a witch costume, sweeping in front of the shrine was like a beautiful painting, and it made people feel like it could disappear at any time. And indeed, this beautiful scene was quickly destroyed by a sudden accident. Pa-dash. Without any warning, in a crisp sound, the broom in the young girl's hands suddenly broke into two. This scene made the young girl's hands stop moving. She stared blankly at the broom in her hand, and after a while, she spoke in a melancholy tone. It seems like something is about to happen. There was no doubt that this statement had no basis for ordinary people. However, the young girl was not an ordinary person. Although she was not superstitious, the young girl had an inseparable relationship with the part that would be regarded as superstitious. Therefore, the broom breaking for no reason was equivalent to an omen, and it was enough for the young girl to believe. Something was about to happen near her. Moreover, it was a big matter. At this moment, a frivolous voice sounded from the direction of the stone steps. "Excuse me, may I ask if you are Miss Wanlaguyoli?" Hearing this voice, the young girl called Wanlaguyoli recovered from her daze, turned her head, and looked in the direction of the stone steps. There, a person was slowly walking toward the young girl. It was a young man in a suit and leather shoes, who looked about 30 years old. He had stubble and gave people a sloppy feeling. The moment she saw this young man, Wanlaguyoli understood. He was not an ordinary person. This was because ordinary people would not look at Wanlaguyoli as if she was a precious talent. In front of ordinary people, Wanlaguyoli was just a well-educated lady. However, in front of those who were not ordinary people, the value of the 10,000-mile valley would truly show. After clearly understanding this point, Wanlaguyoli's expression suddenly became serious. "May I ask, who are you?" "My name is Kanbu, the beautiful witch Yuan." The young man introduced himself in a way that was not polite at all and handed a business card to Wanlaguyoli. After seeing this, you should understand. Hearing this, Wanlaguyoli accepted the business card and looked at the content on the business card. The name written on the business card was Kanbu Dongma, which was a somewhat suspicious name. However, what was more suspicious should be the title next to the name. The Official History Compilation Committee. Seeing this title, Wanlaguyoli secretly said in her heart. The person who claimed to be Kanbu Dongma was not an ordinary person, but a member of an organization that absolutely could not be ignored in the Japanese curse world. The so-called Official History Compilation Committee refers to the organization that unified the whole Japanese curse world and directly belongs to the government. Of course, ordinary people are not likely to know the existence of this organization at all. This organization was responsible for leading almost all the regular cursemoncers and spiritual power users in this country. Inside, there were secret organizations that controlled information: Ministry of Education, Ministry of Science, National Library, Internal Palace Hall, Shrine Hall, and even the Metropolitan Police Department. In other words, unlike most magic associations in Europe and other places, there was only one organization that secretly controlled everything in this country. In other words, there was only one formal organization. And there was only one purpose for the existence of this organization. That was to hide all kinds of supernatural events in the general society, manage and deal with all the people, things, and things related to supernatural events. A secret organization with supernatural powers such as magic, curses, yin and yang, and even supernatural existences such as gods as the purpose. This was the Official History Compilation Committee. Kanbu Dongma was a member of this curse organization. As for the existence called Witch Yuan by Kanbu Dongma, it was a kind of spiritual power user. Just like the witches in Europe, Witch Yuan was also a spiritual ability user that required a rather special bloodline or talent in order to appear. 10,000 miles Guyoli was a witch with a special bloodline and talent. Kanbu Dongma, right? Kanbu Dongma looked at the sloppy young man. "Excuse me, why are you looking for me?" "You don't need to be so serious, it's not a big deal." Kanbu Dongma seemed to be deliberately teasing, and said such a sentence in a frivolous tone. "I heard that your talent in the field of spirit vision is unparalleled, so, there is something that we hope you can help us look at." Spirit vision. A mysterious ability that can decipher the mysteries of the world, and sometimes even see the future. In Europe, this was a special ability that only a very small number of descendants of witches who once served the mother goddess of the earth had. Kanbu Dongma also had this ability. Therefore, Kanbu Dongma was called Witch Yuan. However, Wanlaguyoli furrowed his brows when he heard Ganjin Dongma's words. "Mr. Gandu, spirit vision isn't a convenient ability. Not only is the chance of triggering it extremely low, but it's also a random trigger, just like the apocalypse. Even if you ask me for help, I might not be able to see anything." "You're being modest," Winter Horse Ganchi said calmly. "Your talent in the field of spirit vision is universally recognized as outstanding. If others only have a 10% chance of triggering spirit vision, your success rate is more than 50%. Therefore, we hope that you will assist us." Kanbu Dongma suddenly became silent. After a while, the girl helplessly said. I understand, I can try. Thank you very much. Kanba Dongma politely bowed for the first time, and then took out a piece of cloth from his arms. Looking carefully, it was a piece of clothing. Kanba Dongma took this piece of cloth and said, the thing that we want you to see is this. Piece of clothing? Kanba Dongma raised his eyebrows and looked at Kanba Dongma. The thing that you want me to see is this? Miss Dongma, this is not an ordinary piece of cloth. They had just met, but Ganjin Dongma directly called out Wanligu Yoli's name and said such a sentence. This was left by one of the 7 god slayers in an earth-shattering battle. We spent a lot of effort to find such a piece. God Slayer? Kanba Dongma's heart trembled. It couldn't be helped. In the magic world, this title only belonged to 7 people. Moreover, each of them had the power to shake the entire human society. They were the demon kings that everyone respected. This piece of cloth was left by the 7th king in the battle not long ago. Kanba Dongma put on a serious expression. We hope that you can help us investigate that king. Chapter 1392. Investigate the Demon King? Winter Horse Ganmizu's words undoubtedly surprised Wanligu Yoli. Immediately afterward, Wanligu Yoli had an extremely strong resistance in his heart. At this time, in Wanligu Yoli's heart, a pair of emerald green eyes like the eyes of a lone wolf emerged from the depths of his memory. For the existence of the God Slayer, it was believed that as long as one was in the magic world, they would definitely more or less understand how terrifying they were. After all, they were both kings and demon kings. They were the only existence that could protect humans from the god of disobedience. They were also the only terrifying figures that could destroy the entire human society by themselves. In the face of such an existence, all relevant people in the magic world would be extremely cautious and even fearful of them. Like accompanying a king was like accompanying a tiger, they would always pay attention to their movements and hobbies, in order to be able to get through everything safely when they faced them. According to Wanligu Yoli's memory, there were a total of 7 god slayers in the world today. The most ferocious and violent ancient demon king, Sasha de Janstel Warban. The unparalleled wuxia king of China, Luo Hao. The noble lady who had lived in seclusion for nearly 100 years, Madame Aisha. The hero who protected North America from the evil sorcerer, John Pluto Smith. The Black Prince who had caused many magical events, Alexander Gascoigne. The leader of Italy's Sword Alliance, Salvatore Toni. Many people were not used to the previous translated name, so from now on, this translated name will be used. There was also the most mysterious and unfathomable king who had only been born in the past half a year. He had killed 2 gods of the highest level at the same time when he was still a human and had accomplished the great feat of killing gods no Adol. The 7 kings, the 7 demon kings, were revered and feared by everyone in the magic world. They had absolute power that surpassed anyone in the world. In the past, Yuli of the 10,000 Miles Valley had a trace of relationship with one of the 7 kings under various coincidences. We all know that Miss Yoli has been in contact with Marquis Warban and had a bad experience. Winter Horse Ganmizu seemed to have seen through Wanligu Yoli's resistance and muttered as if he had changed the topic. Because of this, Miss Yoli should know that we can't ignore the existence of any of the kings, especially the one who is extremely special among them. Otherwise, who knows when that king will descend in our country? If we don't handle it properly, it could be an unimaginable disaster. Wanligu Yoli lowered her head and fell into silence. Yes. Yoligu Yoli had once had a relationship with the most ancient and the most ferocious demon king, Warban. The demon king summoned dragon hero, the dragon slayer from the myths. The god of was the dragon was the god slayer god, the dragon slayer from the myths, was the god was the god was that? Was god? Had the was the of was had gu was the was? That time, Wanligu Yoli was one of the witches summoned by Warban for the summoning ritual. Including Wanligu Yoli, after the summoning ritual ended, 2/3 of the witches suffered a heavy mental blow because of the taboo ritual to summon the god of disobedience. Some of them fell into a coma and became vegetative. Some of them went mad and had their lives ruined. Wanli Gu Yoli was one of the 1/3 who was lucky enough to survive and had witnessed that scene with her own eyes. Therefore, to Wanli Gu Yoli, there was nothing more terrifying than the demon king who killed gods. Not to mention, the 7th king was born in the last 6 months, and he was the most unfathomable and mysterious of the god slayers. It was said that after he made his debut, he fought against Italy's King of Swords in less than a week after obtaining the summoning ritual. In the end, he caused a huge loss of 15 billion euros and won. It was said that when he faced the 3 god slayers in Italy, including the oldest demon king, Warban, and Luohao, he still won with his own strength. It was said that he and the Black Prince Yerek also had a confrontation in Napoli. In the end, even the young master who was known for his resourcefulness and speed could only retreat in defeat. It was said that even God Zugmivia, who had been active in the dark of the magic world and was known as the Demon Queen, was helpless and fearful of him. Although it had been less than half a year since he became a god slayer, the name Noah Doria had already spread to every corner of the magic world because of his various miraculous achievements. Now, most people believe that even if this king had the least experience among the god slayers, in terms of power, this youngest king had the qualifications to be above the rest of the god slayers. Therefore, no matter who it was, they all maintained the highest respect and awe for this youngest king. Wanli Gu Yoli, who had once witnessed the terror of the demon king, had long regarded him as a supreme existence. If possible, Wanli Gu Yoli really did not want to have anything to do with the absolute king who even Marquis Warban could only nurse a grudge against. However, when he thought that the god slayer might really come to this country one day, if he did not have any understanding of the king, the consequences would be unimaginable if he angered the king. At the thought of this, Wanli Gu Yoli suppressed his inner resistance and looked at the piece of cloth in Ganji Winterhorse's hand with some difficulty. Even if I help, what can you see from this ordinary piece of cloth? Generally, items that can stimulate spirit vision are items with strong curse power. Ganji Winterhorse handed the piece of cloth in Wanli Gu Yoli's direction. And this piece of cloth was left behind by the king during the battle. It must be a piece of clothing from his body. During the battle, it must have been bathed in the king's curse power and has a trace of curse power fluctuations. We just want to ask Miss Yoli to see if it will work. Wanli Gu Yoli suddenly hesitated. After a while, the kind-hearted girl sighed. I understand. After saying that, Wanli Gu Yoli stretched out his hand and took the piece of cloth. He held it tightly in his hand, closed his eyes, and entered a state of meditation. At this moment, traces of curse power fluctuations slowly flowed out from Wanli Gu Yoli's body. Then, Wanli Gu Yoli opened his eyes and looked at the piece of cloth in his hand. It was also at this moment that Wanli Gu Yoli suddenly felt his consciousness drifting away. She saw it. In the middle of a dense forest, a young man sat on the ground, his upper body leaning against a tree. His eyes were closed and he had fallen into a coma. On his body, not only were his clothes tattered, but they were also full of scars. The most serious thing was that there was a huge wound on his abdomen. It was a wound that seemed to have been dug open by something sharp. Inside, thick blood flowed out. Ah! Wanli Gu Yoli exclaimed and could not help but let go of the piece of cloth in his hand. What's wrong? Ganji Winterhorse quickly asked. Miss Gu Yoli, did you see something? I saw it. It's very likely that the king's person was seriously injured. Wanli Gu Yoli looked at the forest around the shrine in a panic. After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, he said such a sentence. And, it's in that forest. What did you say? Ganji Winterhorse was stunned there. In the dense forest, Wanli Gu Yoli and Ganji Winterhorse trotted on the forest road. Yes, it's here. Wanli Gu Yoli looked around and then pointed in a direction. The place I saw is in front. Ganji Winterhorse nodded and slowed down his pace. He took Wanli Gu Yoli, pushed aside the grass, and walked forward. Not long after, the vision in front suddenly opened up. Then, the two saw it. The young man, whose body was riddled with wounds, seemed to be in a deep sleep. He leaned against a tree and bathed in the sunlight. Around him, rabbits, squirrels, and even deer approached and licked the wounds on his body. It was as if they were helping the young man heal, hoping that he would wake up. Because it was too beautiful, Wanli-gu Yoli and Ganji Winterhorse both looked at this scene in a daze, unable to recover for a long time. Chapter 1393. Pain. That was what Noah was feeling right now. No. It should be said that after the three-headed dragon's claw pierced through his abdomen and pushed him into the lava, even though he had lost consciousness, the intense pain still attacked Noah's mind. It made Noah feel as if the three-headed dragon's claw had been stuck in his body and had not been pulled out. It was very uncomfortable. However, this uncomfortable feeling told Noah he was still alive. Only living people could feel pain. Only a living person would feel discomfort. Therefore, although Noah could not say that he was enjoying the pain, he felt a sense of relief. After calming down, Noah subconsciously felt as if he was dreaming. There was a sentence that kept echoing in his mind. You defeated me, but you did not pass the final trial of humanity. These were the final words that the demon king called Az-Dakaha left for him. What did he mean by that? Noah could roughly understand. Is it because I am stronger than that lizard and am unable to kill him? Simply put, it meant that he did not reach the condition to kill Az-Dakaha. In terms of the bestowment game, Noah did not reach the victory condition. Therefore, even after killing Az-Dakaha, the demonic dragon still came back to life and dealt a fatal blow to Noah. Because there was no contract, he was careless. But thinking about it carefully, that guy was also a demon king. The demon king called Az-Dakaha had actually started his own bestowment game long ago. That bestowment game was called Humanity's Final Trial. When the three-headed dragon reappeared, this bestowment game had already started. And it was just like in Pest's game, where he had to solve the riddle of the inheritance of the Piper of Hamel. In the bestowment game called Humanity's Final Trial, if he wanted to win, he had to solve the essence of the three-headed dragon as the final trial of humanity. In other words, if he wanted to defeat the three-headed dragon, it might not be too difficult for Noah. The difficult part was that Noah still had to solve the riddle of the three-headed dragon as the final trial of humanity. Humanity's final trial was the main reason for the destruction of humanity. Noah needed to unravel the reason why Az-Dakaha became a human in the final trial. Only then could he kill the three-headed dragon and make him disappear completely. Otherwise, no matter how many times he defeated the three-headed dragon, that fellow would continue to revive. After all, the three-headed dragon had said it himself. Go all out. Use all your wits. Let's use up all our brute strength. Try turning into a sword of light that can pierce through my chest. If these words were to be taken as a hint to clear the human's final trial, then it would be just like what the word said. Not only would it require strength and courage, but it would also require wisdom, right? Furthermore, the last sentence also proved that the three-headed dragon's words were a hint. Try turning into a sword of light that can pierce through my chest. If he wanted to kill the three-headed dragon, he would have to pierce through its heart. Furthermore, that was under the condition that the essence of the three-headed dragon as a human in the final trial was unraveled. Then, what was the main reason for the destruction of humanity that created Az-Dakaha as a human in the final trial? Feeling the extreme pain, while Noah felt relieved, the rest of his consciousness was completely focused on this question. Under such circumstances, the pain attacking Noah's subconscious became more and more intense. Then, Noah gradually woke up from his unconscious state. Ah. You're awake? Just as Noah was about to open his eyes, a cute and childish voice entered Noah's ears. Noah slowly opened his eyes. Then, a young but devilish face appeared in front of him. Noah had only seen that face once. However, even though he had only seen it once, Noah clearly remembered who the owner of that face was. Pandora. Impressively, it was the mother of all gods' layers, Pandora. Welcome to the Nether Star realm of life and death, my cute son." Pandora pursed her lips and smiled coquettishly, a smile that did not match her young and tender face at all. "Regarding my mischievous youngest son who disappeared from this world for a month, and when he reappeared, he was inexplicably heavily injured. As a mother, I should have the right to ask, right?" Undoubtedly, there was nothing wrong with what she said. However, when Pandora said such a sentence with her appearance of 14 or 15 years old, it gave people the feeling that there was something wrong with what she said. It made people speechless. Noah could only stare blankly at Pandora, who was lying on the ground above him. He finally understood what was going on. "Is that so?" Noah muttered. "Have I returned to this world?" Although he did not know what was going on, before Noah lost consciousness, he vaguely saw the scene of a broken feather suddenly flying out of the glowing heart that he pulled out from the three-headed dragon's chest. Presumably, the world fragment used the fact that he had retrieved it, and under the urging of the world itself, brought Noah back to the space between worlds. And Noah was heavily injured, so he could not be left alone in the space between worlds, right? Therefore, it was probably Gaia and Alea who sent Noah here. No matter what, Noah survived. Thinking of this, Noah stretched out his hand and touched his abdomen. Now, there was no wound there. This was because Noah was not in his own body right now. He had only let his consciousness enter the nether world and come before Pandora. After returning to his body, he still had to treat the wound. Otherwise, he might really die. But, since he was still fine, Noah should have been saved by someone, right? Thinking of this, Noah straightened his body, turned his head, and looked at Pandora, who was puffing her cheeks, as if she was throwing a tantrum, and said helplessly, "What are you angry about?" "I'm not angry," Pandora said in an unconvincing and indignant tone. "I say, little Noah, you are not obedient. I feel like you are hiding something very important from your mother, so I am very dissatisfied, very dissatisfied." Seeing Pandora put on a "hurry up and coax me, or I will cry" look, Noah did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Noah did not care about Pandora's harmless questioning and said, "Speaking of which, the person who pulled me into the Nether Star realm should be you, right? Do you have something to say to me?" Hearing this, although Pandora still looked extremely dissatisfied, she still nodded and said, "Because you are now in a more troublesome place, so I thought of reminding you." "A more troublesome place?" Noah asked curiously. "What place?" "The island country at the end of the east," Pandora said. "On that island, the strongest god of steel is sleeping. I don't know what happened, but you suddenly ran to such a place. I had no choice but to pull you here and remind you." "The most powerful god of steel?" Noah furrowed his brows. "The island country at the end of the east? I am there now." "That's right." Pandora raised a finger and spoke in an extremely cute manner. "Although that lord has been sleeping for a very long time and there are no problems at the moment, you have a lot of connections with the servant girl who is chasing after that lord. If you are not careful, you will be dragged into it." After saying that, Pandora suddenly reached out and pinched Noah's cheeks as though she was holding Noah's face. Then, she forcefully turned Noah's head to face her and said solemnly, "Don't worry, I'm not going to let you go. That lord is the natural enemy of you god slayers. If he wakes up, you will definitely meet him. You must be careful." After leaving the words behind, Noah's consciousness slowly drifted away. Before he completely lost consciousness, Noah heard Pandora's muttering. "What a mysterious child. However, he can easily stimulate a woman's curiosity. It seems that I have to be careful not to be charmed by my own child." Chapter 1394. His mind gradually regained its clarity. Opening his eyes, Noah just stared at the unfamiliar ceiling in a daze. The things that appeared in his mind were not his current situation, nor the gods that Pandora warned him about, but the battle with the mystic dragon in the previous world. "I didn't expect that lizard to have the another cosmology." Although he wasn't that familiar with another cosmology, he was still not that familiar with it. However, Noah now had a simulated star atlas, another cosmology. So, he more or less knew some knowledge about it. Simply put, the another cosmology, which was equivalent to a cosmology, was the mystery of the gods themselves. Or, it could be said that the so-called another cosmology was the construction of the world of the gods themselves. Take Norse mythology as an example. According to the legends, the gods led by the main god Odin all lived in the realm of the Asgard gods, in a world called Asgard. And one of the another cosmology of the Norse gods was Asgard. And so on. The Olympus of the Greek gods. The 3,000 worlds of Buddhism. The heaven of Christianity. The heavenly court of the China gods. Those were all part of the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. In addition, the center of the cosmology of each mythology was also another cosmology. Like the heavenly book of the East and the Bible of the West, they were all one of the another cosmology. It was precisely because he was at the center of a mythology that the Son of Heaven, who had the another cosmology, had the ability to become the center of the gods and had a cosmology itself. This kind of power that could infinitely expand one's own cosmology, thereby interfering with the outside world, and even destroying the opponent's cosmology and worldview, could even exceed the 3-digit number of Hakata. It could be imagined how much of a violation its power was. And the Avesta that Az Dakaha used was the another cosmology of the Zoroastrianism. That was the manifestation of the dualism of good and evil that Persian mythology advocated. By defining oneself as the rightmost side of good and evil, that is, the evil end, imitating the target's cosmology, and using it as a mirror to host oneself in another cosmology. The object that was imitated by Asvita's universe would have all of its original properties added to the user's body. This included physical abilities, racial characteristics, and even the gift itself. Everything would be obtained by the user of Avesta until the target of the imitation left the battle or was defeated. Not only that, but this, another cosmology, which defined itself as the most right wing of good and evil, could also use the simulated cosmology as a mirror to counteract the opponent's power. Noah unleashed the true name of Excalibur, which had been multiplied countless times. Its power was offset by the 3-headed dragon's Avesta. In other words, this, another cosmology, could not only imitate the opponent's power and add it to the user's body, but it could also counteract the opponent's attack. It was a violation to the limit of a gift. The reason why Az Dakaha was able to repel millions of gods was because of this, another cosmology. With this, another cosmology, no matter how many opposing gods came, Az Dakaha's power would increase as their numbers increased. Coupled with his 3-digit power, the combination of these two attributes made him invincible. Therefore, Az Dakaha, who possessed this, another cosmology, had the terrifying ability to, not win in a one-on-one fight, but in a one-on-many fight, he would become stronger and stronger. This was simply invincible. Of course, there were exceptions to everything. Az Dakaha's Avesta had 2 cosmologies that could not be imitated no matter what. One was the cosmology of the gods of the Zoroastrianism. The other was the human's cosmology as the target of the human's final trial. With only these 2 cosmologies, no matter what, Avesta could not imitate them. Fortunately, Noah's authority was a combination of his own power and the power of the gods of the Zoroastrianism, Wells Lana. It just so happened that he had 2 cosmologies that Avesta could not imitate. Therefore, Noah's authority was not imitated. Otherwise, no matter how strong Noah was, he would not be able to defeat Az Dakaha. In comparison, although my another cosmology also has extremely strong power, the target of its use is quite picky. Illusory star Taisway. This was the another cosmology that Noah had obtained from Galgi. That was the cosmology of China's mythology group. The so-called Taisway referred to the Star of Calamity in China's mythology group, the Taisway Star Lord. Its true appearance was the star spirit of a fictional planet that was hypothesized to be located in the opposite position of Jupiter. In China's mythology group, Jupiter was regarded as the sacred star of the celestial body division method of the 12 equatorial stars that divided the starry sky. It was widely believed in under the name Jupiter. In addition, the 12 zodiacs also used Jupiter as the benchmark of celestial bodies. It was regarded as the highest god of the Greek gods, the lower half of Zeus. In China's mythology, Taisui was named for its three-faced and six-armed body or the image of a catfish-like dragon. As the illusory star, Taisui was different from the other star spirits in the box. It did not have a real form, so it was described in various forms. The Star Sea Dragon King was the identity that Taisui Star Lord used to hide his true identity by changing his appearance and name. That was why Azhi-Dakahar's seal contained the another cosmology of simulated creation. The ability of the illusory star Taisui was to seal the strongest race, other than the pure-blooded dragon species, into a fictional world. If the opponent was a natural god or a star spirit of a star, then it could overcome all the differences in strength and obtain victory. On the contrary, if the opponent was not the strongest race, then it could only exert the effect of having one spiritual level. Unfortunately, the three-headed dragon that surpassed the three strongest races and became the final human trial was not included. Therefore, Noah did not use the another cosmology in the battle with the three-headed dragon. If he had known about the existence of Azhi-Dakahar's another cosmology, Noah would not have used the noble phantasm with the Celtic mythological cosmology. If that was the case, the results should be different, right? No, it won't change. Noah shook his head secretly. If I didn't solve the essence of Azhi-Dakahar's final trial as a human, the result would still be the same. After all, without solving this puzzle, the three-headed dragon would be resurrected immediately even if it was killed. As long as this puzzle was not solved, it was only a matter of time before he was defeated by an opponent who could resurrect infinitely and whose strength was completely on par with his. What essence could it be? Just as Noah was deep in thought, the sound of the door opening entered his ears. Noah was awakened. He turned his head and looked at the source of the sound. Outside the door, a young girl with long flaxen hair that reached her waist slowly walked in with a first aid kit in her hand. Chapter 1395. The girl who walked in had long flaxen hair that reached her waist. She was wearing a witch's robe. The girl with the first aid kit did not seem to notice that Noah had woken up. She first walked in quietly, turned around, and gently closed the door in a well-mannered manner. Then, the girl turned around and looked in the direction of Noah. When she turned around, the girl's eyes met with Noah's eyes. Ah! The girl suddenly opened her eyes slightly and let out a small cry of surprise. Seeing this, Noah felt that the girl's action was a little cute and couldn't help but laugh. It was not until then that Noah noticed what kind of place he was in. This was a Japanese-style Japanese house. The floor was not covered with tiles, but tatami. There was very little furniture around. There were calligraphy murals hanging on the walls. In the corner, there was an incense burner that was lingering with sandalwood, releasing a calming fragrance to every corner of the room. Noah, on the other hand, was lying on a bed that was directly laid out on the tatami. Pandora said that Noah came to the island country at the end of the east. So, Noah was not surprised to see that he was in a standard Japanese-style Japanese house. However, when Noah moved his body slightly, an unimaginable pain spread from his abdomen to his whole body, causing Noah to frown and squeeze out a bitter sound from his throat. This extremely soft sound finally woke the girl up. The girl seemed to want to come closer and take care of Noah, but he didn't know what she was afraid of. As a result, she looked like she wanted to come closer but didn't dare to. She was very conflicted. Are you okay? Hearing the girl's nervous and timid voice, Noah smiled bitterly. It doesn't look like you're okay, but you shouldn't die yet, don't worry. Hearing this, the girl breathed a sigh of relief. Then, a nervous expression appeared on her face again. She quickly squatted down and made a standard sitting position, and put 3 fingers on the tatami in front of her, and bowed deeply to Noah. I'm really sorry, I wanted to cast a healing spell on the king, but for some reason, the spell didn't work. Later, Mr. Gonzai told me that the god slayers are immune to all spells, so we can only use ordinary methods to heal you. In this case, Noah did feel the pain in his abdomen, as if it was tied up by something. Thinking about it, it should be the bandages? But now, Noah had woken up. Since Noah had woken up, as long as he didn't die immediately, there would be a way to heal him completely. In addition, the god slayers had strong vitality and recovery. These injuries, in a few days, they should be healed. Compared to that, Noah was more curious about something else. Thinking of this, Noah endured the pain in his abdomen, and stood up with some difficulty. Ah. The girl was a little flustered. No. You can't. King. You're still injured. It's fine, although it's quite serious, it's not an unbearable injury. Noah didn't listen to her advice, and sat on the bed, holding his bandaged abdomen, and smiled helplessly. So, no matter what, I can't lie down and talk to my savior, right? Savior. Savior. You're exaggerating. The girl said with some trepidation. I just hope that the king won't drag your anger into other people's lives. Noah was stunned. Anger? Why would he be angry? He didn't know how the girls saw Noah's stunned expression, but when the girls saw Noah's stunned expression, the fear on her face turned into melancholy, and then was replaced by determination. No matter what, I'm the only one who saw you like this. If the king is angry because your loss of self-control was seen by others, just punish me alone. The sudden development left Noah at a loss as to how to react. At that moment, Noah could only blink and speak with some confusion. That. Anyway, first tell me, what's your name? Yes. Yes. The girl introduced herself in a respectful tone. I'm Wanrafuri Yoli, Musashina's Witchuan, currently in charge of this Shircho shrine. Musashina? Noah searched his memory. In this world, Noah also stayed for a few months, and in order to prepare for his warrior incarnation, he familiarized himself with various mystics-related books. Therefore, Noah more or less knew about the title of Musashina. I remember, it's a title that's given to the top special female spiritual ability users in Japan, right? Yes. Wanrafuri Yoli nodded and said so. After discovering the king's whereabouts, I drove away the rest of the people in the shrine, and then brought the king here. So, from the beginning to the end, I'm the only one who saw you like this. Please don't vent your anger on others. Unknowingly, this girl seemed to be saying something that Noah didn't understand. So, Noah could only smile bitterly. Undoubtedly, you just mentioned that there's another Kanji-san, right? Wanrafuri Yoli's expression suddenly froze. Seeing Wanrafuri Yoli's, oh no, expression, Noah became playful. Let's not talk about why I was seen like this and why I need to punish others. Just the fact that you lied to the existence of the king seems to be a reason to punish you, right? Hearing Noah's words, Wanrafuri Yoli showed a frightened expression for a moment, but immediately gritted his teeth and looked determined. You're right, lying to the king is a felony. Please punish me. I only asked the king to punish me alone. Is that so? So be it. Noah said so. Then, I'll punish you to send me a table of good dishes. Huh? Wanrafuri Yoli froze there. Looking at Wanrafuri Yoli's silly and somewhat cute look, Noah laughed out loud. Actually, as you can see, I've been through a rather nasty battle. Although I don't know how long I've slept, a god slayer is still a human. Now, my stomach is rumbling and I can't take it anymore. So, I'll punish you by sending me a table of good food. How about that? Huh? Huh? Wanrafuri Yoli was a little flustered and confused, and asked very carefully. Only like this? Oh. Are you not satisfied? Noah raised his eyebrows and smiled somewhat playfully. Speaking of which, there are indeed some people with special hobbies who always hope that others can punish them, and the heavier the punishment, the happier they are. If this is the case, indeed, this degree of punishment can't satisfy you. I'll consider the content of the punishment again. No, no such thing. I don't have that kind of strange hobby. Wanrefuri Yoli quickly said, and then remembered Noah's request and stood up. I understand. Although I don't know if it can satisfy the king, I will try my best to cook the best dishes. Please wait a moment. With such a sentence, Wanrefuri Yoli resolutely walked out of the door with an expression full of a sense of mission. Presumably, this girl should feel that if the dishes she made couldn't satisfy the king, it would cause the king to be angry, and that would be a disaster. So, she left as if she had a mission, right? In short, Noah felt that there was no place to complain. Stroking his abdomen that was still in severe pain, Noah said to himself, "Let's treat the injury first." After making up his mind, Noah closed his eyes and immersed his mind into his body. In the depths of Noah's heart, at this time, there was an extremely beautiful scene. The outline of a stone plate with 10 patterns connected to it was suspended in the center. In the middle of the stone plate, a sun was imprinted on it at some point. In the sun, a mighty lion and a holy dragon faced each other and roared at each other. Such a stone plate was surrounded by a universe that was like the Milky Way everywhere. The stone plate was authority. The sun in the stone plate was the sun's authority. And the universe around the stone plate was naturally the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Chapter 1396. Looking at the miraculous scene in the depths of his heart that represented almost all of his power, Noah focused his attention on the stone plate. At this time, the stone plate was in a gray state. It was like a skill that had not been activated in the game. There was no sign of it being active. As expected, I still need to adapt. Every time he arrived in a world, Noah's authority needed to adapt to the world. It would take a month before he could use it without restraint. However, Gaia had told Alea that this adaptation was mainly because the authority's power had the possibility of affecting the world itself. It did not belong to this world, so it needed to adapt. However, Noah's authority was the power obtained from this world, so there should be no need for him to adapt. Unfortunately, Noah's 10 incarnations authority not only had Wellislana's and Mercator's power, but also his own power. In addition, Noah's powerful vitality had completely absorbed the authority and turned it into his own power, removing all the restrictions that the authority should have. Therefore, after arriving in this world, he still needed to adapt. Of course, because this world already had a power called authority, Noah did not need as long as a month to adapt to the authority in this world. I need 7 days to adapt. Noah withdrew his consciousness from the depths of his body and turned to look at the energy source that was like a black hole. Looks like I need to use the power of an item to recover. After saying that, Noah's mind moved and the energy in the energy source in his body was converted into mana. Then, Noah opened his eyes and used a trace of mana to open the gate of Babylon. Wang! Following the sound of space trembling, a golden ripple appeared on top of Noah's palm and spat out a gorgeous scabbard. Holding the scabbard, Noah sighed. Luckily, in the battle with the lizard, I did not use Avalon. The relic named Avalon not only had an extremely powerful healing ability, but it also had the powerful function of preventing the user from being drained by external forces. However, in terms of healing, Noah had the Spirit Avatar. In terms of defense, Noah also had the Dragon Emperor Avatar. Therefore, during the battle with the three-headed dragon, Noah did not use Avalon. Furthermore, in the battle against the three-headed dragon, Noah also had to use his full power, using his trump card to convert all the energy in his energy source into divine power, which was the most suitable power to unleash his authority. Although the energy in Noah's energy source was endless, its output was limited. There was no extra space for him to use his magic and activate his relic's power. If it was a noble relic like the Excalibur that only required a certain amount of magic to release it, then it would be fine. However, a noble phantasm like Avalon, which required a continuous supply of magic in order to maintain its liberated state, was a different matter altogether. Considering that he had the Dragon Emperor and the Spirit for defense and healing, Noah did not use Avalon. Now that he thought about it carefully, this decision was really the right one. After all, the three-headed dragon's Svita's another cosmology was able to imitate the cosmology of objects other than itself, thereby obtaining all of the other party's properties. At that time, if Noah had used Avalon, a noble relic with a Celtic mythological cosmology, causing the three-headed dragon to obtain the defensive and healing abilities of Avalon, then it would have been really troublesome. Moreover, the three-headed dragon could also use the power of another cosmology to use the target's cosmology as a mirror to offset the other party's power. As long as he wanted to, he could erase the power of Avalon at any time, causing Noah to lose more than he gained, right? That, another cosmology, is really against the rules. With such a sigh, Noah infused magic into the scabbard in his hand, causing a bright golden light to bloom from the scabbard and envelop his whole body. He closed his eyes and began to recover. In fact, Noah, who was thinking this, did not think that his another cosmology was not against the rules. The simulated star atlas, another cosmology, which was called the illusory star Ticeway, could ignore the difference in strength and unconditionally seal the two strongest species, the innate gods and the star spirits of the stars. Although there were restrictions in using it and it could only be used against gods and stars, as long as it was against these two races, even if there were a double-digit number of them, they would not be able to defeat Noah. Among them, there was the White Yiksha, who had sovereignty over 14 suns and was known as the strongest star spirit. Unless the White Yiksha also had the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Otherwise, against Noah's, another cosmology, the White Night King who had once wreaked havoc in an area could only nurse a grievance, right? He did not know if he had considered that if he made Noah wait too long, it might also make the king angry. About 15 minutes later, Wanli Gu Yoli walked in with a tray full of dishes, looking nervous. Plates of fragrant dishes were placed neatly on the side of the bed. At this time, Noah was holding a bowl of rice, picking up a mouthful of food, and tasting it slightly. Looking at Noah's appearance as he tasted the dishes, Wanli Gu Yoli's pretty face could not help but show a trace of nervousness. Clearly aware of Wanli Gu Yoli's nervousness, Noah was more or less amused in his heart. However, his impression of Wanli Gu Yoli improved a lot. Although he did not know what was going on, Wanli Gu Yoli seemed to have been trying her best to avoid provoking Noah's disgust. Under such circumstances, if Noah asked for a good meal, then, who would want to find a famous chef or a hotel to make a table of luxurious dishes? However, this girl did not do so, but faithfully made this table of dishes with her own strength. Obviously, Wanli Gu Yoli did not have as many playful hearts as the general power holders. She was quite honest. In addition, Wanli Gu Yoli seemed to be very afraid. As the king of the god slayers, she still took care of Noah when Noah was seriously injured. She was probably also very kind, right? In this way, Noah could not deliberately find fault against his heart. Moreover, the dishes made by Wanli Gu Yoli were indeed not bad. On the contrary, this kind of home-cooked food made Noah quite like it. So, Noah smiled slightly. Not bad, it's delicious. Wanli Gu Yoli's eyes suddenly lit up, and her expression suddenly became cheerful. You like it? It's really great. It's good that you can be happy. Noah curled his lips. While eating the dishes made by Wanli Gu Yoli, he talked to himself. So, the person over there, it's almost time for you to come out, right? This sentence, unsurprisingly, made Wanli Gu Yoli startled. Immediately afterward, Wanli Gu Yoli seemed to feel something, and her expression began to look around with a serious expression. However, it was different from Noah. The reason why this girl found something wrong was entirely because of her overly keen intuition. In the next second, a helpless and frivolous laughter that was mixed with bitter laughter sounded from the surroundings. Really worthy of being the strongest king and the witch with outstanding spiritual sense. This little trick really can't be hidden from the two of you. As such a voice sounded, a figure slowly emerged from the corner of the room. Seeing this person, Wanli Gu Yoli was slightly surprised. Mr. Gonzai? Sorry, Miss Yoli, I left the king to you alone to take care of. Gonzai smiled at Wanli Gu Yoli, then looked at Noah, bowed his head, and saluted. I'm Gonzai Dongma of the History Compilation Committee. I have something to discuss with you. I wonder if I can borrow some time. Chapter 1397. The History Compilation Committee? Noah stopped what he was doing, and his curiosity was slightly aroused. It is said that it is the only formal organization with the nature of spells in this country, right? Isn't it amazing? This was not a polite remark. In Europe, there were countless magic associations active in the mysterious world that ordinary people could not touch. After all, Europe was the birthplace of magic, and it was also a place where various myths and legends were extremely popular. All kinds of magic power that had been passed down from ancient times to the present had accumulated, and naturally, it had become the phenomenon of many factions. In this country, there were not so many associations with the nature of spells. There was only one that even monopolized the power of official organizations. Anyone would think that the History Compilation Committee was not simple. In this regard, Gonshi Winterhorse just smiled perfunctorily. You must be joking. Unlike a big place like Europe, we are just an organization in a small island country at the end of the East. We only have a little influence here. Unlike those famous magic associations, even in various places around the world, they can more or less show a little power, right? This was also a fact. It was precisely because this country's geographical location was relatively remote and its territory was not comparable to other countries that it could develop into a situation where there was only one force that could cover the sky. In fact, in Italy, although there were so many magic associations, but the magic associations that really stood at the top, in terms of power and influence, almost every one of them was comparable to the History Compilation Committee. For example, both the Red Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross that Erica and Liliana belonged to had as much power as the History Compilation Committee. As for the Sage Parliament, which specialized in the study of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience, because of its special nature, there was no way to compare it. However, with Princess Alice, who was known as the most elegant and beautiful in Europe, as the former speaker, it was enough to prove that the Sage Parliament was not simple. Noah was clear about this, Gonshi Winterhorse was also clear about this, and even Wanli Guyoli was very clear about this. However, even if it was clear, no one would discuss this matter. The reason was simple. Even the most outstanding forces were extremely fragile in the face of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience. Although Noah did not have the idea of looking down on the forces of this world, he did not really regard them as a threat. Therefore, Noah didn't care too much about it. As for Wanli Guyoli and Gan Shidong Ma, they were also aware of this fact. Naturally, they would not embarrass themselves in front of Noah. Immediately, the three of them fell into silence. Noah ate silently. On the other hand, Wanli Guyoli and Gan Shidong Ma didn't even dare to breathe. They quietly waited for Noah to speak. This state lasted for about 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, Noah slowly finished all the dishes cooked by Wanli Guyoli. After that, he put the empty bowl and chopsticks on the tray. After that, he wiped his mouth with a napkin and faintly smiled at Wanli Guyoli. It was very delicious. Thank you for your hospitality. Upon hearing Noah's words, even Wanli Guyoli, who was a little afraid of the God Slayer, couldn't help but relax a little. Then, he bowed to Noah. It's just a simple meal. Please don't mind it. Noah smiled and nodded. Immediately, he got out of bed and began to untie the bloody bandage wrapped around his abdomen. Ah! Wanli Guyoli couldn't help but exclaim. After he reacted, he hurriedly said, Wait. Wait. Your injury hasn't healed yet. No. Noah shook his head. It's already healed. With such a sentence, Noah directly untied all the bandages on his abdomen. Wanli Guyoli and Gan Shidong Ma both saw it. The huge wound that was still left on Noah's abdomen not long ago had now disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, Wanli Guyoli and Gan Shidong Ma looked at each other in dismay. The two people who were responsible for rescuing Noah from the wild saw how serious Noah's injury was. The wound that was pierced by the three-headed dragon's sharp claws, even if the highest level of healing spell was used, wouldn't it take a few days to heal? However, Noah had only been unconscious for a day and a night. How could he completely recover from such a huge injury in a day and a night? Sure enough, the God Slayers were a group of extraordinary existences. Noah seemed to have seen through the thoughts of Wanli Gu Yoli and Ganji Dongma. He placed the blood-stained bandage aside, stroked his unscathed abdomen, and shrugged. Don't look at me like that. I just used some convenient means. Even if it's a God Slayer, if he suffered such an injury, without a specialized healing ability, it's impossible for him to recover all at once. After saying that, Noah looked at Ganshi Dongma. So, what do you want to discuss with me? Ganshi Dongma hesitated for a moment, then said. Actually, I have already reported to the higher-ups about the king's arrival in our country. And after knowing that the king has come to this country, the elders who have some connections with the official history compilation committee expressed that they want to meet the king. Senior elder? Wanli Gu Yoli was astonished. He asked cautiously. Mr. Ganshi, the elders you are referring to, are they the ones in Secluded World? Secluded World? Noah was suddenly interested. The elders of the official history compilation committee are actually living in Secluded World? Yes. Ganshi Dongma smiled bitterly. Those elders used to be the elders of this country's spell world, but now they have transcended the mortal world and become extraordinary existences. Among them, there were even people who used to be disobedient gods, but later chose to live in seclusion and entered Secluded World. Oh. Noah narrowed his eyes. Since they are already living in seclusion, then why do they still want to meet me? If possible, I also hope that they can quickly transcend and become Buddhas. Ganshi Dongma spread out his hands. Jumping out from time to meddle in other people's business should be a common problem for the elders. We also have a headache when those elders suddenly come out and tell us what to do. Gone. Mr. Ganshi? Wanli Gu Yoli said with some confusion. You shouldn't say that, right? Well, in fact, it is indeed so. To suddenly request to meet the king, for us, it is a bit abrupt, isn't it? Ganshi Dongma said without a care. Then, King, I wonder if you can meet with them? Hearing this, Noah's eyes showed traces of thoughtfulness. After a while, Noah suddenly asked. The disobedient gods will appear in places related to their mythologies. This country has the concept of 8 million gods, so a god should have appeared in the past. Since there is a god, then there will be a god who will come to visit, right? The sudden question caused Ganfang Dongma to be slightly startled. He immediately replied. In the past, there was indeed a king who visited this country. That's true, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. Noah nodded and continued to ask. Then, at that time, did the so-called elders meet with those god slayers? Ganshi Dongma frowned and said with some uncertainty. They shouldn't have, right? Those elders don't seem to care much about the god slayers. Oh. Noah smiled indifferently. Then, why do they suddenly want to meet with me, the youngest god slayer? Ganshi Dongma was stunned. Seeing this, Noah gave the answer. It's very simple, because I have something that they are interested in, and I have some relationship with the object of their interest. After saying this, Noah looked at Ganshi Dongma with a smile. So, there is no need to meet. Help me tell them that I have no interest in the gods sleeping on this island, so they can rest assured. Gods? Ganshi Dongma was shocked. There's a god sleeping on this island? Wanli Gu Yoli asked in surprise and bewilderment. King, is this true? Sort of. Noah didn't know what to think and looked at Ganshi Dongma. By the way, lend me your phone. Chapter 1398. In this world, in order to facilitate communication, Erica and Liliana had also prepared a phone for Noah. However, because phones could not be used in other worlds, Noah had left his phone with Erica and Liliana before leaving this world the last time. Of course, Noah had secretly left his phone behind, and did not tell Erica and Liliana. Otherwise, if the two girls found out that Noah had left his phone behind and could not be contacted, Erica and Liliana would definitely throw a tantrum, right? This time, although Noah did not choose to return to this world after a month, it seemed that only a month had passed since Noah left this world. After all, before Noah left, he had destroyed the volcano and the beach in Nabali because of the battle with Perseus and Yerek. Even if such a major event was hidden from the eyes of ordinary people, it could not be hidden from the forces in the magic world. Of course, this included the official history compilation committee of this country. After asking Winter Horse Ganshi, Noah confirmed that he had only left this world for a month. He just did not know how Erica and Liliana had been doing during this month. Presumably, the two knights had also tried various methods to confirm Noah's whereabouts, right? Unfortunately, in the end, it would definitely end in failure. Now that Noah had returned, if he did not contact his two followers, they might reprimand Noah when they found out about his whereabouts, right? Therefore, after borrowing Winter Horse Ganshi's phone, Noah relied on his strong memory to recall Erica's phone number and dialed it. Although there are a lot of things that I want to talk to you about, you should first tell me where our king is and how he is doing right now. As soon as she received the phone call, Erica said this in a tone that was reminiscent of a fake smile. Although Noah was of a mind to ask how Erica knew that it was him who called when he didn't even say anything, he didn't think it was necessary to ask that question in front of a knight who had mastered all kinds of magic tricks, right? Therefore, Noah answered straightforwardly. I'm in Japan now. Japan? That island country? Erica asked in a displeased tone. Why did you go to that place? Well, for various reasons, Noah said perfunctorily. All in all, I'm here now. Is everything okay on your side? A month's time was neither long nor short. If something really troublesome happened, 1 month was enough to raise the level of this troublesome matter several times, or even cause a series of troubles. That was more than enough time. This was especially true when Erica and Liliana were in Italy right now. No matter what, Italy was the base of that astonishingly stupid idiot. If that idiot Tony intends to play any tricks, during the period of Noah's absence, I'm afraid that Italy will be directly played by that idiot. Noah only wanted to know if anything had happened in Italy during this period. At the mention of this topic, Erica's voice became serious. To be honest, we're in big trouble now. Big trouble? Noah sensed that something was wrong and said straightforwardly. Is it related to the deicide? Or the god of disobedience? In this world, only these two things could make Erica, a knight with extremely high self-esteem, say big trouble. Otherwise, with Erica's strength and ability, it couldn't be easier to deal with it. And it turned out that Noah's guess was correct. It's related to the deicide. Erica sighed. I don't know why, but after you left, the news of you obtaining the Holy Grail suddenly spread throughout the entire magic world in Europe. Now, almost all the magic associations in Europe are looking for your whereabouts. Hearing this, Noah frowned. Holy Grail. It was the center of the magical engineering incident caused by the Black Prince Yerek, which had once involved the entire magic world in Europe in an unprecedented battle. This was a sacred relic of the demonic path that had a deep relationship with the goddess of earth, and was even closely related to the god of steel, who was known as the last king. Not long ago, Noah had snatched it from the hands of its original owner, the being known as the god ancestor, Ganivia. Other than Noah and Ganivia, only Erica, Liliana, and Alice knew about this matter. In that case, who was the one who spread the news? After thinking for a while, Noah understood. Ganivia did it, right? I'm afraid so, Erica said. For the Devil Queen, the importance of the Holy Grail is needless to say. Now, this divine relic that even the Black Prince Yerek couldn't snatch has fallen into your hands, and she couldn't do anything about it. So, naturally, she could only follow Athena's method and put the blame on you, then look for an opportunity to snatch the Holy Grail back. That famous demonic Tao sacred tool was of extraordinary significance to the world of magic. After all, in the legends, the so-called Holy Grail was a vessel that contained the blood of Christ and had all kinds of mysterious powers. Some people said that it could rejuvenate people. Some people said that it could bring people back from the dead. Some people said that it could make people immortal. Some people said that it could make people become gods directly. There were all kinds of legends, and in addition to the fact that it was a sacred relic of Christianity, it was natural that it had such a special status. Therefore, as long as one was in the magic world, there was no one who didn't want it. Of course, those who really knew what the Holy Grail, that Noah snatched from Guinevere was, knew that its real function was not that. However, this divine relic that was closely related to the gods of snake and steel was so valuable that even the Black Prince Erech coveted it. Now that the news that Noah had obtained the Holy Grail had spread, it was enough to cause a sensation in the magic world. Especially the Black Prince who had been pursuing the Holy Grail, it was impossible for him not to take action. The troublesome god slayer that Erica mentioned was probably Erech, right? As expected, Erica immediately said. After the news spread, the Black Prince Erech came to us directly and forced us to know your whereabouts, but even we didn't know where you were. In the end, he returned without success. However, the royal factory, led by the Black Prince, has been quite active recently and has even been monitoring me and Lily. Lily and I had no choice but to part ways temporarily and return to our respective magic societies. What about Alice? Noah asked. Since such a big thing has been involved, it's impossible for Alice to sit back and do nothing, right? It should be said that Her Royal Highness has been actively involved in all kinds of troublesome things, right? Erica sighed. The princess seems to be very happy to see the Black Prince running around helplessly trying to find your whereabouts. According to her, in order to give the Black Prince a good blow, she's prepared to use all her power to find you first and then laugh at him. That Her Royal Highness still likes to join in the fun. Noah said, a little speechless. Forget it. Since things have become like this, what are you going to do on your side? For the time being, Lily and I won't go to your side. There are people watching us all the time, Erica said after pondering for a moment. Although the news that you're in Japan shouldn't be hidden for long as you don't do anything eye-catching, you shouldn't be discovered so soon. I'll tell Princess Alice about your news first. When the time comes, Princess Alice will go over to support you. That works too. Noah nodded unenthusiastically. Then I'll stay here for the time being. After chatting with Erica, Noah hung up the phone and laughed bitterly. I've just come back and I'm already in so much trouble. Does life have to be so exciting all the time? Chapter 1399. Just after Noah hung up the phone, a wave of spell power suddenly emerged in mid-air in front of him. Amidst the sudden fluctuation of spell power, a mobile phone flashed out of it without any warning and fell into Noah's arms. That mobile phone was the one that Noah had left with Erica and Liliana when he left this world the last time. Presumably, Erica had specially used the magic of delivering a letter to transfer it over, right? Although it seemed a little exaggerated to use magic to transfer a mobile phone, it was not surprising when one thought of the things in the mobile phone. Of course, this sentence did not mean that there was anything special about Noah's mobile phone. It was just an ordinary mobile phone. However, in this mobile phone, there were the private phone numbers of the leaders of many famous magic societies in Europe, and even Tony's mobile phone number. With so many powerful people's numbers gathered in this mobile phone, coupled with Noah's status as the seventh god slayer, he believed that as long as he dialed any one of them, he would be able to do most of the things he wanted to do, right? Therefore, for Noah, this mobile phone was still a little useful. At the very least, he could leave all the trivial chores to the magic societies. This was the relationship between the king and the magician. The king was responsible for fighting the gods. The magician was responsible for dealing with all kinds of trivial matters around the king. It was such a transaction-like relationship. Therefore, Noah did not feel that it was troublesome to carry such a mobile phone with him. He put the mobile phone directly into his arms and returned the mobile phone that Winterhorse Ganji had lent him. Thank you, you've been a great help. Winterhorse Ganji, who had been silently listening to Noah talk on the phone, took back the mobile phone silently and scratched his head, looking very troubled. A trace of worry also appeared on Wanli Yoli's face. After hesitating for a while, he mustered up his courage. Well, my king, are you really going to stay here? Why? Noah raised his eyebrows. You don't welcome me? No, it's not like that. Wanli Yoli looked as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Looking at Wanli Yoli's anxious appearance and Ganshi Dong Ma's troubled expression, Noah shrugged. I know what you are worried about. Aren't you afraid that I, as a deicide, will cause trouble and affect the safety of the citizens of this country? Wanli Yoli and Ganshi Dong Ma were speechless. Obviously, Noah was right. Although this sentence was not pleasant to hear, wherever the Godslayer went, it often symbolized the occurrence of a disaster. This was a fact. So far, among the people Noah had met, whether it was Warban, Luohao, Yerek, or Tony, they were all people who would never care about the problems around them once they wanted to achieve something. If such a person, coupled with a strength that no one could match, wasn't that a disaster? Even Noah himself could not guarantee that he would not do the same thing. Of course, compared to the rest of his kind, Noah was undoubtedly much more rational, but sometimes, it was difficult to determine whether it was right or wrong to be too strong. At least, even if Noah deliberately controlled himself, once he was slightly involved in a battle that required a little more serious, it would often cause damage. Even Noah could not control such a thing. And he couldn't passively take a beating just because he didn't want to destroy the environment, right? Then what was the point of fighting? Therefore, this was an almost unsolvable problem. Not to mention Ganshi Dong Ma, Wanli Yoli was really worried that the existence of the Godslayer would have some bad effects on this country, right? Ganshi Dong Ma should also feel that serving a Godslayer was not a good job, right? It was natural that the two of them would have such a reaction. Looking at Wanli Yoli's extremely worried look, Noah sighed. Well, don't show such an expression. No matter what, you are my savior. I will try my best not to let the things you are worried about happen. After saying such a sentence, Noah did not pay attention to Wanli Yoli, who was stunned by his words, and turned his eyes to Ganshi Dong Ma. The official history compilation committee, right? How about making a deal? A deal? Ganshi Dong Ma was stunned at first, then he smiled bitterly. King, you are too serious. If you need us to provide power, then just tell us. We don't dare to think about making a deal. I think what you said is really serious. Noah curled his lips and smiled. Originally, the relationship between the Godslayer and the magician was like this. The Godslayer fought against the gods on behalf of humans and protected humans from the hands of the gods. As the representatives of humans, you worship us as kings and obey our orders. This relationship is no different from a deal, right? Ganshi Dong Ma grabbed his hair and said helplessly. I didn't expect the king to see through it so clearly. It doesn't matter if you see through it or not. There are good and evil among humans, and there can't be people who are exactly the same among the Godslayers. It doesn't matter if you regard us as monsters, but it's best not to think that monsters will eat humans. Noah spread his hands and said so. So, I will say it directly. For the time being, I will stay in this country and maintain the relationship between the king and the follower with the official history compilation committee. Hearing Noah's words, Wanli Yoli seemed to be a little stunned, but Ganshi Dong Ma suddenly understood. You mean, well, in order to not let my existence cause the things that my savior is worried about happen, I will try my best to live like an ordinary person here. Noah said so with a hidden meaning. However, individuals who possess strength are the source of all kinds of trouble in the first place. During this period of time when I don't want to cause trouble, I need a highly capable follower who can help me drive away all the flies and take care of all the trivial matters. Originally, this responsibility was taken up by Erica and Liliana. But now, the two girls were under Yerek's surveillance and couldn't immediately rush to Noah's side, so Noah could only look for another target. Although Noah could also use the summoning book that he brought out from the underground library of the great underground tomb in Nasarick to summon servants, those servants were all of the mutants, and to a certain extent, were more dangerous than the Godslayers. Because of this, Noah took a big turn. The official history compilation committee will choose the follower, so it's convenient for you to monitor me, isn't it? Noah said bluntly. On the other hand, if there are disobedient gods on this island while I'm here, then I will be responsible for dealing with them. This relationship between the God-slayer and the magician, let us execute it perfectly. Hearing this, Ganshi Dongma fell silent, and so did Wanligu Yoli. After a while, Ganshi Dongma looked up, and his face regained its frivolity. I understand. I will be responsible for reporting to the higher-ups about the follower. I believe they won't refuse to help. It's a great help that the king is so easy to talk to. Mr. Ganshi. Wanligu Yoli hurriedly said. That's rude of you to speak like that. It doesn't matter. The so-called deal can only be made when both parties are on equal footing. Noah waved his hand and said indifferently. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about where I should live next. Well. Ganshi Dongma deliberately dragged out his breath and then patted Wanligu Yoli's shoulder. Miss Yoli, I'll leave the daily life of the king to you. Huh? Wanligu Yoli was stunned at first, and then he exclaimed. Huh? Seeing Wanligu Yoli's expression as if he had seen a ghost, Noah couldn't help but feel a little amused, and then said such a sentence with bad intentions. It seems that I have to continue to stay with my savior for a while. Please give me more advice, lovely Miss Witch. Wanligu Yoli opened and closed his mouth, and couldn't close it for a long time. After a while, he lowered his head and looked dejected. I understand. Thus, Noah and Wanligu Yoli's cohabitation life began. Chapter 1400. In one of the rooms in the Shrine of Seven Heroes, Noah was sitting on a bed with a small silver sword in his hand. After pondering for a while, he converted the energy in his body into the source of divine might. He extracted traces of divine might and infused it into the small silver sword. However, under the infusion of divine aura, the small silver sword that was Noah's elven magic device did not move at all. Its previous brilliance was also gone. After experimenting a few times, Noah sighed in distress. As expected, Aster still hasn't woken up. In Box 54545 Outer Sex Blazing Flames City, during the attack by the Demon King Alliance, Noah used the curse-breaking ability of the Demon Slayer in order to free Letitia from the dragon's body. Furthermore, he used the Dragon Emperor's incarnation to multiply his power several times. Because the multiplication of power was too great, Aster fell into a deep sleep and never woke up. At first, Noah was still worried about Aster's condition. Only after sensing Aster's condition through the elven contract did he feel relieved. Simply put, Aster's hibernation was not because he could not withstand Noah's power, but because Noah's power stimulated Aster's original power, causing Aster's power to gradually awaken. As the strongest sword elven, Aster's true power was not that simple. In the past, in the elemental elven world, Aster did not belong to the camp of the 5 elven kings, nor did he belong to the camp of the dark elven king. He only cared about himself in the war between the two camps. At that time, even the elven kings were afraid of Aster's power and did not dare to get too close to him. However, it was also because of this great power that ordinary elven users were unable to form a contract with Aster. Even the Saintess of Salvation had to pay the price of her life to use Aster. This could be considered a kind of price. After forming a contract with this kind of elven user, Noah naturally could not unleash Aster's true power as a novice elven user. He had always been working with Aster in various ways. Now, under the stimulation of Noah's authority, the run-in and compatibility between Aster and it seemed to have finally reached the passing line, causing Aster's true power, which even the Elf King feared, to begin to awaken. In order to adapt to the sudden increase in power, Aster fell into a deep sleep. When Aster woke up, Noah's elven user power would have greatly improved, right? I just don't know when she will wake up. Noah stared at the small silver sword in his hand. After a while, he sighed again and gently stroked the sword as he murmured to himself. Wake up quickly, little girl. Without you accompanying me to sleep, I feel a little lonely. It was unknown if she had heard Noah's words, but the small silver sword flashed with traces of light. Seeing this, Noah smiled slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he raised his hand, causing a wave-like golden ripple to undulate in front of him. He then placed the small silver sword in it. "You should rest well for a while, Aster." After saying this, Noah raised his hand again, causing the wave-like golden ripple to shrink and disappear. Then, Noah closed his eyes. I wonder how Letitia and Pest are doing. The contracts with Letitia and Pest still existed, proving that nothing had happened to the two girls. However, Az Dakaha's seal had already been undone. In front of the humans' final trial that even the millions of gods could not do anything about, presumably, the box court would fall into an unprecedented chaos, right? Noah only hoped that the members of No Name would not be involved in it. Unfortunately, this idea was somewhat unrealistic. With the special abilities of 16 Knights, Joyuan Flying Bird, Kasuga Tribes Yao, Black Rabbit and the others, if the three-headed dragon were to wreak havoc in the box court, they would definitely encounter this great demon king. At that time, it would be very troublesome. Fortunately, in the battle with Noah, although the three-headed dragon had used the special characteristics of the human's final trial to trick Noah, he had also been beaten up by Noah to the point that he could not even split his body, exposing his fatal weakness. Considering this point, in order to recover from his injuries and spirit, the demonic dragon should temporarily hide for a period of time. Regardless of whether this period of time was long or short, the next time Noah returned to the box court would be a month later in the other world. In a month's time, the three-headed dragon should be able to fully recover, right? However, when he fully recovered, Noah would once again appear in front of the demonic dragon. Therefore, the situation had not developed to the worst yet. Even if something were to happen, Noah still had a resurrection item, so it should not be a big problem. So, the biggest problem is still the riddle of absolute evil? In terms of strength, Noah was on par with Az Dakaha. In fact, he was slightly stronger than him. However, only by unraveling the essence of Az Dakaha's final trial as a human, Noah would be able to defeat the demonic dragon. That lizard's, another cosmology simulation, is not much of a threat to me, as long as it does not use weapons with a cosmological view outside of Persian mythology. Noah pondered. Although my another cosmology is also useless against him, as long as I can unravel his essence, my warrior will be able to use it and kill him. Therefore, everything was ready, except for the east wind. However, when would the east wind come? That was another question. As expected, it's impossible to think of it in such a short time, right? Noah shook his head. Forget it, it's not a good idea to keep thinking here, let's go out for a walk and relax first. Thinking like this, Noah suppressed all the thoughts in his heart, got up, and walked out of the door. After leaving the room in the shrine, Noah walked on the corridor paved with wooden planks and walked in the direction of the front hall. Along the way, several clergymen dressed as clergymen brushed past Noah, and all of them bowed their heads to greet Noah, and then left without hesitation. Noah naturally did not put on any airs, and when they greeted him, he nodded slightly in return, and then let them leave. Looking at the clergyman's respectful and cautious behavior, it was likely that Wanraku Furukawa or Kaneji Takuma had already mentioned Noah's identity to them, and asked them to treat him with caution. The reason why they just nodded their heads and left without hesitation was probably because they felt that the more they spoke, the more likely they would make mistakes. In order to not provoke Noah's disgust, they treated Noah in this way. This also made Noah understand once again. For the average person, even if it was a magician or a conjurer with superb abilities, a god slayer was an extremely terrifying existence. With such thoughts, Noah came to the front hall of the shrine. Suddenly, Noah's footsteps stopped, and his eyes looked forward. He saw that there, Wanraku Furukawa was holding a broom, sweeping it up and down, and seemed to be somewhat absent-minded. Seeing Wanraku Furukawa like this, Noah blinked, but his footsteps began to move, and he began to walk in the direction of Wanraku Furukawa. Perhaps he heard Noah's footsteps, but Wanraku Furukawa maintained an absent-minded look, turned his head, and looked behind him. With this look, Wanraku Furukawa was suddenly startled, and finally recovered from the state of being in a daze, and said nervously, "King, King?" Noah scratched his cheek and smiled helplessly. "Please, can you not call me like this in broad daylight? It's like shameful play. It's quite embarrassing." "Shameful play?" Wanraku Furukawa was slightly startled, and she asked doubtfully, "What is shameful play?" Noah choked at once. Although the time spent together was not long, Noah also understood what kind of person Wanraku Furukawa was. In a word, she was a lady of the boudoir. It was normal for this girl not to understand that kind of advanced vocabulary. So, Noah cleverly changed the topic. "What were you thinking about just now?" This sentence made Wanraku Furukawa's pretty face suddenly blush. Chapter 1401. Time went back to yesterday. After a discussion about Noah's temporary stay in Japan, Wanragu Yoli and Kaneji Winterhorse left the room. As soon as they left Noah's room and walked a distance away, Wanragu Yoli, who was holding an empty bowl and plate in her hand, said angrily to Kaneji Winterhorse next to her, "Mr. Kaneji, why do you want me to take care of the king?" "What's wrong?" "Miss Yoli?" Kaneji Winterhorse's attitude was still frivolous. "You don't want to?" "It's not a matter of whether I want to or not, but is it really okay for me to do it?" Wanragu Yoli said with some worry. "Aren't you worried at all that if I don't treat the king well, all the people in this country will suffer with me?" This was what Wanragu Yoli was worried about. For the god slayer, Wanragu Yoli had always maintained a fear in her heart. Noah's performance was quite normal, which made Wanligu Yoli feel a little closer to him inconceivably. But Noah was still a demon king after all. And Wanragu Yoli was just one of the many witches in Japan's curse world. Moreover, Wanragu Yoli admitted that she had not mastered any skills to please people. So, compared to Wanragu Yoli, there should be more people who were more suitable to take care of Noah, right? Wanragu Yoli was only worried that if, because of her relationship with Noah, the existence known as the Demon King would vent his anger on this country, then her sin would be really big. Therefore, Wanragu Yoli was not unwilling to take care of Noah, but she was worried that she would not do well and implicate others. "What do you want to say? I don't understand." Kaneji Winterhorse glanced at Wanragu Yoli. "But, Miss Yoli, what kind of relationship should we establish with the king in the future, and how should we get along with him? These need to be explored repeatedly. Before that, if we act rashly, we don't know when we will step on a landmine and cause the king to be unhappy. You should also know how terrible the god slayer is, right?" Winterhorse Gonshi took off his glasses, took out a piece of cloth from his arms, and said while wiping his glasses, "Although the king has only been a god slayer for less than half a year, he is more powerful than the rest of the god slayers. Even the two oldest demon kings, Marquis Waban and Hierarch Luohao, as well as the King of Swords of Italy, are no match for him. We can't imagine how powerful he is." Saying this, Mr. Ganjin put on his glasses again. "So, if possible, we should try our best to maintain a good relationship with him." It was understandable that the Winter Horse would be so cautious. In Europe, where magic originated, almost every magic association knew how to get in touch with the king and how to deal with him, because they had coexisted with many deicides so far. As for the official history compilation committee, although they had several encounters with the deicide, their experience was not as rich as that of Europe. After all, it was just an island country on the world map. Whether it was in terms of territory or population, it was considered small compared to the real big countries. Under such circumstances, it was natural that they did not have as much experience with the gods and the deicide as other countries. In order not to rashly cause trouble, we can't act rashly at the moment, Winterhorse Gonshi said. But we can't just leave the king alone. That would be the worst way to deal with it. After thinking about it again and again, I can only think of letting Miss Yoli take care of the king. That is undoubtedly the most suitable. I'm the most suitable? Wanli Gu Yoli was a little confused. Why? It's very simple. Because you are the savior of the king. Even if you do something bad by accident, the king will forgive you on account of this, right? Winter Horse Ganchi said directly. Moreover, although he is a great demon king with the power of a god, the king is still a young man after all. So, it is also a classical and royal practice to have beautiful and lovely girls serve him, right? WH. What? Wanli Gu Yoli's pretty face instantly turned red because of Winter Horse Ganchi's words. She said in disbelief. Do you want me to? That's about it, right? Winter Horse Ganji said in a malicious tone. Although I'm very sorry, Miss Yoli, I still hope that you can maintain a close relationship with the king. The closer the better. Please. Please don't make such a joke. Wanli Gu Yoli shouted with a red face. How can I do such a shameless thing? You can't say that, Miss Yoli, Winter Horse Ganchi said in a kind way. Since ancient times, beautiful girls have been a long-lasting and powerful weapon, especially when they are used to deal with kings with status, power. They can exert an unimaginable influence. If you can establish a close relationship with the king and make him obey you, don't you think that it will be a good thing for us and this country? Why do we have to do that? Wanli Gu Yoli couldn't help but ask. Although the king is a god slayer, we can use communication to understand each other, can't we? That is also a way, but it is definitely not a good way. Winter Horse Ganchi shook his head. Men are creatures. No matter how rational, serious, and honest they are, as long as a cute girl asks them to do something, they will still hesitate. I am the same. Winter Horse Ganchi didn't notice Wanli Gu Yoli's look as if she was looking at something dirty, and kept talking. For young men, there is nothing more valuable than a cute girl, especially a girl like Miss Yoli who blushes and says things like, I'm not doing it for your own good. That's even more against the rules. Yes, this is cute. I can't understand what you are saying at all. Wanli Gu Yoli said coldly. No matter what, it is unreasonable to ignore a woman's thoughts and let her play the role of someone else's lover, right? Of course, it won't be the kind of practice that forces others. Winter Horse Ganchi seemed to have calmed down from his inexplicable enthusiasm and excitement, and shrugged. I just think that Miss Yoli's words will definitely achieve the results we expect. If you don't want to, I will report it to the people above and let them find some volunteers to perform this task. Wanli Gu Yoli was at a loss. Volunteers? Does Miss Yoli think that no one will be willing to do this kind of thing? Winter Horse Ganchi waved his hand. Then you are a little naive, Miss Yoli. Although the God Slayer is terrible, on the other hand, it is because of this that they are the most reliable. They are called kings, and they have unparalleled power and status. If you can become a popular person by their side, don't you think that it will be of great benefit to you and your force? Wanli Gu Yoli understood what Winter Horse Ganchi said. However, understanding didn't mean that Wanli Gu Yoli could accept it. For this honest and serious young miss of the boudoir, this kind of thing was too advanced. Seeing that Wanli Gu Yoli didn't know what to say, Winter Horse Ganchi tentatively asked. Does Miss Yoli hate the king? Hate? Wanli Gu Yoli was slightly surprised, and then shook his head like a rattle drum. No. It's not like that. It's better to say that I think he is easier to talk to than the Marquis, the God Slayer. He is also a little gentle. I definitely don't mean to hate him. Seeing this, Winter Horse Ganchi showed a victorious smile. In that case, how about you try to become good friends with the king a little? It won't be so difficult to accept, right? Hearing this, Wanli Gu Yoli opened his mouth slightly, and finally, he could only nod. Chapter 1402. Recalling the conversation with the Winter Horse at that time, Furu's face couldn't help but turn red. She felt that her cheeks were burning. Although the final result of the discussion was to let Furu try to be good friends with Noah, whether it was a girlfriend or a good friend, first of all, it was necessary to have a good relationship. And to have a good relationship with a boy, Wanrefuri had never tried it. Wanrefuri had two identities. The other was a very ordinary high school student's superficial identity. The other was her identity as the witch Yuan of the spell world. In terms of appearance, Wanli Gyuli was just a student in a school that was not very famous, nor was he a declining school. Although he participated in a club, he was only a member of a tea ceremony club. The girls in the club were all well-educated and cultivated girls. In addition, Wanrefuri's appearance was actually very outstanding. In the eyes of others, she seemed to be a lady from a prestigious family. In the school, she was recognized as the campus belle. With these two identities, there were many people of the opposite sex who yearned for Wanrefuri, but there was not a single person of the opposite sex who really interacted with her. And in terms of her identity, as a witch, Wanrefuri naturally had no chance to contact the opposite sex. In fact, the title of Yuan was a title given to the most outstanding of the witches. Wanrefuri's family, which Wanrefuri was from a long time ago, often gave birth to children with psionic ability. It was considered a rather famous family in Japan's magic world. Wanrefuri was raised with the goal of becoming a witch from a young age. In order to cultivate, Wanrefuri had gone out of the country, and also entered the deep mountains and forests, but almost all of them were with her classmates and friends who also cultivated with the goal of becoming a witch. Of course, there was no chance to contact the opposite sex. As a result, whether it was her identity or her identity, Wanrefuri had no experience of close contact with the opposite sex. Now, suddenly, Wanrefuri had a good relationship with the opposite sex. How could this innocent lady not be confused? Therefore, even when Wanrefuri was cleaning, she was somewhat absent-minded, thinking about such things. Under such circumstances, Noah's question made Wanli Gyuli's face turn red in an instant. Seeing Wanli Gyuli suddenly blushing, Noah felt somewhat strange and took a few steps forward. What's wrong? Why is your face so red? After saying that, Noah very naturally reached out his hand and placed it on Wanli Gyuli's forehead. Then, he placed the other hand on his own forehead and compared the temperature of the two hands. You seem to have a fever. Are you okay? When Noah put his hand on Wanli Gyuli's forehead, Wanli Gyuli's entire body went blank. When she came back to her senses, she saw Noah checking her body temperature in an extremely natural manner. Wanli Gyuli's originally very red face suddenly seemed to be boiling, the color constantly darkening. No, why is it getting hotter? Noah frowned. Do you really have a fever? Then it's better to quickly take a rest. Hearing this, Wanli Gyuli resisted the urge to turn around and run away. Because of the intense shyness, she felt that even her head was a little dizzy. Her expression was stiff as she spoke. No need. I'm fine. Unfortunately, Wanli Gyuli didn't know that in this state, the more she said so, the less convincing it seemed. In addition, Wanli Gyuli was the kind of person who would give people the impression that she was too serious and honest. When she said such words, it gave people a feeling of insincerity. So, Noah narrowed his eyes. I see. Indeed, you look like the kind of person who will force himself. To deal with this kind of person, at this time, you should use a little tough approach. A little tough approach? Wanli Gyuli was slightly stunned. Just when Wanli Gyuli was stunned, Noah suddenly stepped forward, bent down, and carried Wanli Gyuli, who couldn't react in time. Yes. Noah carried Wanli Gyuli. Moreover, it was a standard princess carry. Hey. Hey. Hey 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 hey. Wanli Gyuli was completely stunned. After Noah's unique masculine breath rushed to the tip of Wanli Gyuli's nose, Wanli Gyuli came back to her senses. Her face quickly turned red as if it would emit steam. King. Wanli Gyuli was at a loss of what to do. She could only open her mouth with a red face. What are you going to do? I want you to take a rest. Noah said matter-of-factly. Ignoring Wanli Gu Yoli's panic, he carried the girl and walked in the direction of the inner hall of the shrine. Anyway, if I just persuade you, you will definitely say that you are fine, right? I'm really fine. Wanli Gu Yoli was so shy that she didn't even know where to put her hands. Please put me down. After I put you in bed, I will naturally put you down. Noah ignored Wanli Gu Yoli's loud reprimand and walked on the wooden corridor in his own way. He didn't even turn his eyes to Wanli Gu Yoli and said so. Before that, you just need to be obedient. This is too rude. Wanli Gu Yoli blushed and stared at Noah. Even if you are the king, forcing others to do things that they don't want to do is already disgraceful as a person. That's also relatively speaking. Noah looked like he didn't want to take advantage of her. If the essence is for someone's good, and the result is not bad, then it is not a bad thing. Anyway, I'm not forcing you to have a good relationship with any man. What's the problem? However, those words instead caused an intense reaction from Wanli Gu Yoli. Have a good relationship with any man? Wanli Gu Yoli shouted with some excitement. I won't do that kind of shameless thing. Is it? Noah, who was frightened by Wanli Gu Yoli's overly excited reaction, said very strangely. I just said it casually. Why are you so angry? Casually said it? Wanli Gu Yoli seemed to be really angry. You are the king. Since you are the king, you should consider your usual words and actions. Your words and sentences may affect the whole world. Please be a little conscious of your identity and actions. Seeing Wanli Gu Yoli's inexplicable angry look, Noah secretly felt puzzled and said. In short, I don't care how you want to mess around, but since I have seen it, don't mess around under my eyes. This sentence should be said by me. Wanli Gu Yoli subconsciously put his hand around Noah's neck and looked straight at Noah with a serious expression. Because you're the king, no one cares about you no matter how you act. But since you're in front of me, I won't just watch you act recklessly. I hope you can listen to me a little. Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows. In other words, as long as I listen to you, you will also listen to me? As long as I listen to you, you will listen to me? The redness on Wanli Gu Yoli's face gradually faded. After pondering for a while, his eyes met with Noah's. If I listen to you in the future, will you also listen to me? Seeing Wanli Gu Yoli's extremely serious look, Noah seemed to have seen through his thoughts, and the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. It's not impossible to consider. Wanli Gu Yoli suddenly became silent, and then nodded firmly. I understand. I will listen to you in the future, so I hope the king can also listen to my advice in normal times. Then it's settled. Noah nodded. Wanli Gu Yoli heaved a huge sigh of relief, and his shoulders relaxed. Soon after, he shyly hid his face in Noah's arms. In this way, Noah carried Wanli Gu Yoli and walked into the girl's room. Chapter 1403. While the relationship between Noah and Wanli Gu Yoli was developing smoothly, on the other side, Ganshi Dongma encountered an unexpected obstacle. In order to prepare enough followers for Noah, Ganshi Dongma had been running around in the past few days. Although he kept saying, making people stay up late and work overtime for several days and nights in a row without sleeping, even the most black-hearted company wouldn't do such an unreasonable thing. As expected, I should ask for a raise. He didn't feel nervous or complain at all, but when he did things, he didn't drag his feet at all. In order to find a suitable follower candidate, Ganshi Dongma had indeed not slept for several days. Of course, as a member of the official history compilation committee, Ganshi Dongma had also received no less than the spell training of a formal conjurer, and his own spell cultivation was also very high. For Ganshi Dongma, not sleeping for several days and nights was not a very difficult thing to endure. However, at this time, the member of the official history compilation committee was at the foot of a mountain, leaning his body on the door of the car parked next to him, and sighed with a tired face. What are those old people thinking? This sentence received a sudden response. In fact, Hui Na doesn't know what Grandpa is thinking, but since Hui Na received the order, she can only act according to the order. Hearing such a voice, Ganshi Dongma reacted. This was a very rare thing. As a well-trained person, Ganshi Dongma was rarely approached to the position where even the voice could be transmitted so clearly, but he didn't notice anyone approaching. However, the owner of this voice did it. Moreover, this voice was not like Ganshi Dongma's, full of calmness and maturity. It was extremely light and clear, and only a young girl's voice could be heard. Ganshi Dongma, who had already known what kind of identity and ability the other party had, was not surprised at all. He just raised his head and looked in the direction of the mountain. On the only path that led to the foot of the mountain, a young girl was walking out of the depths of the mountain in a very natural manner without the slightest sound of footsteps. It was a graceful girl who was only about 16 or 17 years old. The girl had beautiful long straight black hair, and she was wearing a white shirt, a khaki vest, and a short skirt, as if she was a high school student. However, the girl also had factors that ordinary students didn't have. For example, the average student wouldn't have a face as beautiful as a young girl's, so beautiful that it would cause people to raise their eyebrows. For example, ordinary students wouldn't have the aura of Yamato Nadeshiko, which was close to nature and extremely elegant and gentle like a young girl. For example, ordinary students wouldn't go in and out of the mountain alone like the girl. For example, ordinary students wouldn't be like the girl, carrying a long cloth bag on the side of the shoulder. The moment he saw the girl, Ganshi Dongma glanced sideways at the long cloth bag for the first time, and after a flash of a hidden look in his eyes, he retracted his gaze, and helplessly spoke to the girl who approached him. Long time no see, Miss Hui Na. I didn't expect that one day, I would see you interrupt your most important cultivation for such a matter. For Ganshi Dongma, it doesn't matter which side it is. The girl said in a polite but straightforward and cheerful tone. Ganshi Dongma doesn't hate to cultivate in the mountains, but she also doesn't hate to live in the city, and there are indeed many convenient things in the city that are not available in the mountains, which can save a lot of trouble for Ganshi Dongma. For humans who are used to all kinds of convenient things in the modern world, life in the mountains is unimaginably difficult, and Ganshi Dongma can actually save a lot of trouble to get over it, which is admirable. Ganshi Dongma said insincerely. I've heard about this from the people above, Ganshi Dongma, what should I say? What? Ganshi Dongma tilted her head, as if she was naive and romantic. Mr. Ganshi, do you think Ganshi Dongma doesn't have the ability to be the king's guard? You're joking. Ganshi Dongma smiled bitterly. If even Ganshi Dongma doesn't have the ability to be the king's follower, then I can guarantee that no one in the world can be the king's follower. Grandpa said so too. Ganshi Dongma nodded. That's why Grandpa asked Ganshi Dongma to go to the king's side. Is that really the case? Ganshi Dongma curled his lips and smiled. Although I don't want to be too explicit, but just because the king asked for a follower, he personally gave the order and sent Ganshi Dongma to the king's identity, ignoring our dissuasion. To be honest, it has caused us a lot of trouble. There's no other way, because that's Grandpa's request, I can't go against it. Ganshi Dongma lowered his head, and apologized in a seemingly polite manner, but in fact, there was no apology at all. I'm really sorry for causing you trouble. It's nothing, I'm just following orders anyway. Ganshi Dongma sighed. It's just that, for that old man to actually give such an order for such a thing, we have to think about whether there's any reason behind it. Ganshi Dongma isn't very clear about what Grandpa is thinking. As Ganshi Dongma said this, a fierce smile like a warrior appeared on her beautiful face. However, regarding the king that everyone has been talking about, Hui Na is a bit interested. If possible, I really want to meet the king as soon as possible. After saying this, Ganshi Dongma slightly lifted the long cloth bag she was carrying on her shoulder. Tian Songyun also thinks the same, right? The moment the words fell, there was only a short moment, but a trace of hidden power leaked out from the long cloth bag and disappeared in a flash. Feeling the hidden power fluctuation, Ganshi Dongma's eyes once again showed a look of fear. Wanli Gu Yoli, who was half forced by Noah to rest, did obediently follow Noah's instructions that day, lying in bed and sleeping for the whole day. In fact, Wanli Gu Yoli didn't have a fever at all, but because she was too shy, her temperature rose so much. Noah didn't know about the secret agreement between Wanli Gu Yoli and Ganshi Dong Ma. Therefore, he didn't think that a girl who had just known him for a few days would suddenly become shy in front of him. As a result, such a beautiful misunderstanding was created. In this way, Wanli Gu Yoli was embarrassed to say it, and could only hold a trace of guilt of lying, and obediently took a day of rest. Such an abundant amount of sleep made Wanli Gu Yoli wake up early the next morning. Because it was still a hot season, Wanli Gu Yoli, who slept for a whole day, sweated a lot. Therefore, Wanli Gu Yoli decided to take a bath first and clean his body. After removing his clothes in the bathroom, Wanli Gu Yoli looked at his reflection in the mirror in front of him. Her skin was as white as ivory, translucent and delicate. His figure was slender and wonderful, as if it would break with a snap. However, the place where it should be protruded was full of weight, and the place where it should be concave didn't have a trace of excess fat. Such a figure, although it couldn't be said to be extremely full, but the curves were clear, and it was also full of charm. In the past, Wanli Gu Yoli never cared about his figure. At most, he just thought that it would be better to be thinner than now. But now, as Wanli Gu Yoli looked at the reflection of her naked body in the mirror, she actually murmured out loud as if at the behest of gods and demons. If it's a boy, will he like this figure? Wanli Gu Yoli, who was muttering to himself, quickly woke up, and his face was red because of shame. What am I thinking about? This statement was like preparing to use this body to do something in front of a boy, wasn't it? Because of her bold words, the innocent girl felt so ashamed that she wanted to die. She quickly ran into the bathroom and took a cold shower. After taking a bath, Wanli Gu Yoli finally recovered his calmness. Wearing a witch costume, she came out of the bathroom and came to the main hall of the shrine. However, when Wanli Gu Yoli arrived in front of the main hall of the shrine and was ready to carry out the daily cleaning, two figures just walked up the stone steps. Chapter 1404. Wanli Gu Yoli, who was just about to get a broom, saw two people slowly walking up the stone steps and was completely stunned. To be more precise, it should be said that after seeing one of them, he was stunned. It was Hui Na and Kaneji Winter Horse. A man and a woman leisurely walked up the long stone steps that most people would definitely feel tired after walking the entire way, and arrived in front of the shrine. As soon as she saw Wanli Gu Yoli, Kaneji Winter Horse used a frivolous attitude to greet her. "Hello, Miss Yoli." "Yo, Yoli." Hui Na greeted her in a friendly tone. "Long time no see. Seeing that you're doing well, I'm really relieved." Hui Na. Wanli Gu Yoli finally reacted and exclaimed. Why are you here?" Obviously, Wanli Gu Yoli and the girl called Hui Na knew each other and were even familiar with each other. "What? Yoli, you haven't heard of me?" Hui Na said with a somewhat surprised expression. "I heard that the king is here," so Hui Na thought that Yoli must know that the king is looking for a follower. Follower? Wanli Gu Yoli was stunned and then understood. In other words, Hui Na was sent by the committee to be Mr. Noah's follower? Oh. Kaneji Winter Horse raised her eyebrows, and a malicious smile suddenly appeared on her face. "Mr. Noah?" Yoli actually called the king's name directly. Hui Na was also a little surprised, but then she understood. Right, on the way here, Mr. Kaneji also said that Yoli is preparing to develop a very close relationship with the king. It seems that Yoli is doing a good job. It's really surprising that the obedient girl Yoli actually did it. When she saw Kaneji Winter Horse's malicious smile, Wanli Gu Yoli realized that she had misspoken. Now, Hui Na's words made the innocent girl's pretty face turn red, and she said angrily and shyly. I'm not preparing to become that kind of relationship." Hui Na. "Don't make it sound like I'm indecent." "Is that so?" Hui Na asked strangely. But, Mr. Kanaji said that Yoli is working hard to maintain a close relationship with the king for the sake of the people of this country. Hui Na admired Yoli at that time. I didn't do such a great thing. Wanli Gu Yoli quickly waved her hand and shook her head. I just tried my best to entertain Mr. Noah as a guest, and Mr. Noah is not the kind of king who will casually do something harmful to others. Yesterday, they had just opened up to each other and had a conversation. When she said this sentence, Gu Yoli Yoli, Yoli Gu Yoli, Yoli, was very confident when she said this sentence, she, Gu Yuli to the end. Kanaji Winter Gu Yoli was surprised Yoli Gu Gu Yoli. Although he verbally ridiculed Gu Yoli, Kanaji Winter Gu Yoli did not think that in just one day, Gu Yoli's pure character would have any breakthrough progress with Noah. Since this was the case, Kanaji Winter Gu Yoli, who had an excessive fear of Yoli Gu Yoli, Kanaji Winter Gu Yoli, felt that this matter was worth considering. After all, Gu Yoli's talent in spirit vision was almost unparalleled. The so-called spirit vision was actually a kind of revelation. Gu Yoli's intuition was also quite sharp, almost to the point of being able to match Noah's sensing ability. In this way, the reason why Gu Yoli was so confident was very likely that her keen intuition told her that Noah was such a person. This could make Kanaji Winter Gu Yoli feel a little relieved. As for Hui Na, after pondering for a while, she seemed to have made up her mind and raised her head. If that's the case, let Hui Na take Yoli's place and build a good relationship with the king. Such an abrupt statement not only stunned Wanli Gu Yoli, but also Ganshi Dong Ma. Under such circumstances, Hui Na said bluntly. Actually, although I'm here to be the king's guard and follower, Grandpa also specially told me that if I can develop a close relationship with the king, then I should let Hui Na do it. Grandfather? Wanli Gu Yoli said with some uncertainty. Are you referring to that old man? Tsuma had said that in Yushur, there was a group of elders of the Japanese spell world who lived in seclusion there. Among them, there was even the former god of disobedience. The grandfather, that Hui Na spoke of, and the old teacher, that Wanli Gu Yuli and Ganjin Dong Ma spoke of, were all referring to the god of disobedience. The reason why Hui Na called him grandfather was that they had a close relationship. That god had even given her a god relic. Since it's grandpa's order, even the committee won't have an opinion. Moreover, Hui Na is not uninterested in this matter. While saying that, Hui Na lifted the cloth bag on her shoulder. Not only Hui Na, but Tian Songyun is also very interested in the king. Hearing this, Wanli Gyuli unconsciously cast his gaze towards the long cloth bag. The moment he saw the cloth bag, Wanli Gu Yoli's heart started beating rapidly. With Wanli Gu Yoli's keen intuition, he could clearly feel it. In that cloth bag, there was a terrifying spell that was difficult for others to feel. That was a level of spell that ordinary humans, or even powerful magicians and spellcasters could not have. Although that level of curse power was not as strong as that of the god Slayer and the god of disobedience, it was not weaker than that of the divine beasts that were known as the followers of the gods, who were comparable to the highest-ranking holy knights in Europe. Because of that, the existence of the cloth bag was necessary. The cloth bag was specially woven to block the power of the curse. Even so, Wanli Gu Yoli's spiritual sense could still sense its aura. It was the god relic that was given to Hui Na by the god. That was why Ganzue Winter Horse would say, if even Ms. Hui Na is not capable of being the king's follower, I can guarantee that no one in the world can be the king's follower. After using the god relic, Hui Na's strength was one of the best in the world. He was one of the best. Even Erica and Liliana, who were known as prodigies, could not be compared to this girl. After all, this girl was special. Compared to the god ancestor, she was not inferior. Anyway, Hui Na is going to see the king now. Hui Na put the cloth bag back on her shoulder and smiled at Wanli. Wanli, quickly take Hui Na to see the king. I know. Wanli Gu Yoli looked away from the cloth bag and nodded. So, Hui Na, Mr. Ganzue, please come with me. However, at this moment, an accident happened. Buzz. Accompanied by a buzzing sound that seemed to tremble the entire space, a surge of spell power surged like a crazy roaring wave from one of the corners of the shrine and burst into the sky. The invisible curse power directly turned into a substantial pressure, causing the entire space to become heavy. At the same time, the surrounding air was fiercely pressed down. Hui Na, Ganzue Winterhorse, and Wanli Gu Yoli's expressions changed at the same time. Then, their shoulders sank, as if they were suppressed by an invisible heavy burden, and their bodies sank. However, the three of them had completely different reactions. Wanli Gu Yoli, who had an extraordinary talent in the field of spirit vision but whose body was weaker than an ordinary person, immediately paled and sat on the ground, paralyzed. Ganzue Winterhorse, who had a high cultivation in spells but was not good at face-to-face combat, also suddenly fell and lay on the ground in an extremely embarrassing manner. Only Huina felt her body sink slightly, and she knelt on the ground with one knee. Although she was not as embarrassed as Wanli Gu Yoli and Ganzue Winterhorse, a trace of sadness flashed across her pretty face. What? What's wrong? Huina bit her lips, enduring the terrifying spell power, and said in an extremely uncomfortable voice. What happened? That direction. Wanli Gu Yoli looked at the center of the spell power with a shocked expression. That's the direction of Mr. Noah's room. His words made Huina and Ganzue Winterhorse's expressions change. Chapter 1405. Ugh, in the hallway of the shrine, the clergy fell to the ground one by one, as if they were carsick, with a look of discomfort. Of course, that was to be expected. Unlike Yukari, who was in charge of guarding the shrine, although some of the clergy in this shrine also had some cultivation in curses, they weren't very proficient in it. Yukari, who was in charge of guarding the shrine, was officially commissioned by the Official History Compilation Committee to be a spiritual ability user sent here. Because the places she was sent to were all important spiritual power centers located in different parts of the country, the command system was completely different. Therefore, even the shrine's chief couldn't give orders to Yukari, but treated her as a noble guest. Therefore, under normal circumstances, in a shrine, the person with the most outstanding cultivation in curses was usually Yukari, who was in charge of guarding the shrine, and not the clergy. Using the entertainment industry as an example, it was the difference between celebrities and staff, that's all. In this way, it naturally led to the clergy who didn't have a high cultivation in curses, or who didn't have a trace of attainment in curses, to be suppressed by the pressure of the curses in the air like a heavy pressure, making them feel extremely uncomfortable. In such a situation, Manatsuki Yuri, Kei-na, and Kanji Takuma all desperately raised the curses in their bodies to resist the heavy pressure around them, as if they were against an invisible wind, and walked forward with difficulty. Looking around, looking at the clergy who fell to the ground one by one, as if they were suffering from car sickness, Manatsuki Yuri said with great concern. They should be fine, right? Don't worry, it's just a reaction similar to car sickness, although it's uncomfortable, it's not serious. Kanji Takuma said with some seriousness. Although the curses in the air are extremely large, there's no specific target, just like when we usually raise the curses in our bodies, it's just naturally letting the curses out of our bodies, it's not intended to cause any harm, so there's no problem. Just raising the curses in our bodies? Manatsuki Yuri said with some disbelief. Just raising the curses in our bodies caused this kind of result? I don't want to believe it, that's too exaggerated. Kanji Takuma smiled bitterly. However, this is the only way to explain why ordinary people who don't have any spell power would only feel dizzy under such an exaggerated fluctuation of spell power. With such an amazing curse power, if it was really aimed at someone, then the entire shrine would be blown away, right? Huina also put forward her own opinion, but there was a faint light in her eyes. It's amazing. Is this the power of a king? As they spoke, the three of them arrived at the center of the tremor of the curse power. This was where Noah's room was located. Buzz. An enormous amount of curse power that could not be seen with the naked eye kept passing through the door like a terrifying gust of wind. Wanli Gu Yoli, Huina, and Ganjin Dongma felt as if they were standing on the edge of an abyss. It was as if they were enduring a cold wind from the depths of hell. A trace of discomfort appeared on their faces. Under such circumstances, the three of them could only raise the curse power in their bodies again, allowing the curse power to flow in their bodies to resist the incoming pressure. Although doing so would cause the curse power to be drained at an extremely fast speed, if they did not do so, apart from Hui Na who had a god relic protecting her, Wanli Gu Yoli and Ganjin Dongma would fall to the ground like the other priests, unable to move at all. Mr. Noah. Wanli Gu Yoli walked forward with worry written all over her face. Just when she was about to open the door, Hui Na stopped her. Let Hui Na do it, Hui Na suggested. Behind the door, the fluctuation of the curse power is already so strong. If the door is opened, it will be even more terrifying. With Yoli's strength, he may not be able to withstand it. So, let Hui Na do it. Although Wanli Gu Yoli was also an outstanding witch, her true strength lay in the aspect of spirit vision. Her attainments in other areas could only be considered as proficient, but not outstanding. On the contrary, Hui Na not only had a god relic protecting her body, but she was also involved in both martial arts and curses. In order to cultivate, she had been training hard in the mountains. In addition to her frequent contact with the god who gave her the god relic, she had experienced the enormous power that humans could not possess. She was also one of the top powerhouses among humans, so naturally, she was more suitable than Wanli Gu Yoli to be the vanguard. Therefore, Wanli Gu Yoli did not refuse and obediently stood behind Hui Na. Ganjin Dongma stood behind Hui Na as well, but he stood in front of Wanli Gu Yoli. Clearly, he wanted to help Wanli Gu Yoli resist the incoming curse power. Just like that, Hui Na opened the door in a straightforward manner. Buzz! In an instant, the sea of curse power that was comparable to a storm surged out of the room like a surging wave, attacking the group of people. The stormy waves of curse power surged out. Even though Wanli Gu Yoli, Hui Na, and Ganji Dongma were mentally prepared, their complexions couldn't help but change. They tried their best to increase the curse power in their bodies to resist the berserk curse power fluctuations. Fortunately, the incoming wave of curse power was just like what Ganjin Dongma had said. It was not targeted. It was just like when ordinary humans increased the curse power in their bodies, the curse power would naturally seep out of their bodies. It did not have any substantial power. It flashed through the space and shot in Noah's direction. Chapter 1406. Noah had no idea what was happening outside. Because Noah didn't expect that his experiment would cause such a big commotion. Yes. Experiment. All of this was just Noah's experiment. The object of the experiment was the sovereignty of the sun obtained in the last world. In the last world, Noah mainly got two gains. One was to fight with all kinds of legendary existences, which made his ability value gain a lot of experience points. Not only was it upgraded to LV5, but it also upgraded the all-around value to stage No. The all-around value was upgraded to stage A. That was before Galgi disguised as the black-robed man to test Noah. After that, Noah experienced a series of battles with Galgi, Maxwell, Letitia, and a series of legendary figures such as the final trial of mankind, and gained a lot of experience points. After waking up this morning, Noah's ability value was updated, and his ability value was once again improved. Noah Doria LV 5 Strength, A, 865, SSS, 1840, Durability, A, 877, SSS, 1847, Dexterity, A, 880, SSS, 1856, Agility, A, 888, SSS, 1866, Magic, A, 866, SSS, 1859, Mystery, FD Magic, FD Swordsman, FD Shatter, ID Magic, Weapon Refining, Steel Making Magic. Duplicate, refine, and forge weapons. Duplicate, refine, and forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Duplicate, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained for a long time according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Swords protection, permanent magic. Permanent protection will be obtained according to the attributes of the contract spirit. Contract spirit as a sword spirit, obtain the protection of the sword spirit, and weaken physical attacks on oneself. The degree of weakening will increase or decrease according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold smelting, quick attack magic. Gradually turn the target into steel. Successful tempering will crush it. The tempering speed is determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills, protection from the world, it was a permanent skill. Equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. The overall increase in proficiency had increased by nearly 5,000 points. This level of improvement was simply appalling. To be able to have such an improvement after reaching LV5. That was really quite amazing. After all, the higher the level, the harder it would be to increase the proficiency. Although this was something that had yet to be proven, almost everyone could feel that once they leveled up, it would become very difficult to increase the proficiency. Including Noah. Therefore, even Noah was pleasantly surprised by this improvement. However, when he thought about the level of existences he had fought in the past few battles, this level of improvement was not surprising. Moreover, in terms of development abilities, Noah's abilities were all upgraded to D stage. Especially the development ability of fragmentation, it leaped all the way, directly skipping 5 stages and catching up with the development ability of mystic, magician, and swordsman. That was natural. The improvement of development ability was the same as the basic ability, it had to go through the path of gaining experience. If you want to improve magician, you have to use magic and magic often. If you want to improve swordsman, you have to use sword skills and sword-type weapons often. And if you want to improve fragmentation, you naturally have to use powerful skills that can cause destruction often. Almost every battle Noah fought would cause unimaginable destruction. It was natural that he would directly upgrade so many stages. In this way, the comprehensive improvement of the ability value allowed Noah's strength to take another small step forward. In addition, he also leveled up in the box, causing the use of the 2 avatars to no longer be a burden, proving that Noah's choice to enter a world with a higher degree of power, which was the world of the box, was not wrong. Another gain was the sovereignty of the sun and simulated star map, another cosmology. Not to mention the sovereignty of the sun, the simulated star map, another cosmology, was already a huge gain. After all, with the illusory star Tai Sui, the 2 strongest species in the box would no longer be a threat. Although there was a limit to who he could use it on, the ability was indeed against the rules, so the gain was not small. As for the sovereignty of the sun, it could be strengthened correspondingly with the inheritance. The sovereignty of the sun of the Leo constellation could strengthen the defense, allowing the person to be immune to all the attacks of the sharp blade-type weapons. The sovereignty of the sun of the dragon could strengthen the spiritual lattice, greatly increasing the spiritual lattice of the person. In Noah's body, it was a large increase in magic, divine power, and divine power. It could even strengthen the spirit with some special techniques. It was precisely because of the strengthening of the spirit of the dragon's sovereignty that Noah could use the 2 avatars without any burden, which could be said to be of great help. However, in normal times, when Noah did not need to use the 2 avatars, the strengthening of the dragon's sovereignty of the sun became dispensable. No matter what, Noah's magic, divine power, and divine power were all endless, so there was no need to increase them. That was why Noah thought of it. Since the energy was unlimited and there was no need to increase it, then, using the dragon's sovereignty of the sun to increase the limited output, would it work? As soon as he thought of it, Noah immediately put it into action and began the experiment. As a result, the experiment was a success. After increasing the output, the terrifying divine power that ordinary people could not imagine surged out of Noah's body, instantly causing all the clergymen of the 7 heroes' shrine to faint and fall to the ground. And all this, Noah, who was concentrating on the experiment of using the dragon's sovereignty of the sun to increase the output, did not notice at all. Of course, Noah's sensing ability was not just for show. Although the approach of Wanli Yoli, K-Na, and Kantori Winterhorse, because he was too focused, Noah did not notice at all. But when he was attacked and felt hostility, malice, and killing intent, it was impossible for Noah's sensing ability not to wake Noah up. Under such circumstances, the black divine's sword pierced through the air like an arrow. The sharp sound of the sword piercing through the air made Noah, who had extraordinary sensing ability, open his eyes immediately. As soon as he opened his eyes, the sharp tip of the sword came straight at him, enlarging in Noah's dark pupils. Feeling the strong curse power on the divine saber, Noah's eyes narrowed. Without any hesitation, he raised a hand. Ding! As a crisp sound came, the sharp tip of the divine sword was caught between two of Noah's fingers before it could touch Noah's pupils and pierce his eyes. It stopped in mid-air. Wah! K-Na was shocked. He blocked Tian Songyun's attack with his fingers. He blocked the attack of a god relic with his bare hands. Kantori Winterhorse was stunned too. Are you kidding me? Wanli Gu Yoli directly covered his small mouth with a look of disbelief. The so-called god relic was a general term for the weapons, tools, and equipment used by gods. The divine sword named Tian Songyun was one of them. In the world of Xiaoya, it was called a relic. In the world of Xiaoya, it was called a godhead weapon. No matter which world it was in, such a famous divine sword was blocked by Noah with two of his fingers. I see. Is it a god relic? Noah's frown disappeared slowly. It's indeed amazing. Unfortunately, this body has impenetrable power. No matter how powerful the god relic is, it can't pierce through my body. Noah extended his other hand and flicked the black divine sword as soon as he was done speaking. Clang! As the loud sound of a bell was heard, the divine sword named Tian Songyun was flicked away by Lin Huang's finger. It spun in the air and eventually stabbed into the ground not far away from the door. At that moment, golden ripples that looked like water ripples appeared again. Chains popped out and wrapped around the divine sword. The famous divine sword was bound to the ground and could no longer move. The outcome had been decided. It only took 1 second. Chapter 1407. Clang, 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 clang. The pitch-black divine saber that was tightly bound by the chains trembled uncontrollably, rubbing against the chains that bound it tightly. Crisp clashing sounds rang out continuously, reverberating through the air. However, no matter how hard the black sword struggled, it could not break free from the chains. Noah only got up from his bed when he saw that. I knew it. I thought it was strange that a god relic would have a consciousness. The divine knife named Tian Songyun clearly had a mind of its own. It attacked Noah on its own accord. However, Noah had never heard of a god relic having a consciousness. Noah glanced at the struggling pitch-black divine blade, then turned his gaze to Huina. Although the sword is a god relic, it's not Susanu's sword in Japanese mythology. It's a subordinate god that was born from the god's power, am I right? Huina was slightly shocked when she heard that. She nodded immediately. Yes, although Kusanagi is a god relic, it's not the real Kusanagi sword in Japanese mythology. It's a subordinate god of the god that I serve. A subordinate god. It was also a type of god. Just like how Noah had servants like Letitia, Pest, and Aster, in all kinds of myths and legends, the gods also had their own god subordinate to them. Such subordinates were called subordinate gods. Subordinate gods did not have a fixed form nor a fixed identity. Some of them were gods that had a deep relationship with the god that they served in the myths. Some of them were gods like Kusanagi sword that were part of the god's power that they served in the myths. In terms of strength, they were inferior to the god slayer and the disobedient god. However, it was still stronger than the divine beasts and the like. Of course, a subordinate god like Kusanagi sword that appeared in the form of a god relic in myths was more outstanding in terms of the weapon aspect. The amount of power that could be unleashed depended entirely on the user's ability to use it. In other words, the Kusanagi sword that Huina had was not the real Kusanagi sword in Japanese mythology. It was the subordinate god of the Kusanagi sword's owner, the famous Susanoo. It possessed the functions of a god relic as well as the identity of a god. However, it was not the real deal. That was why Noah's Enkidu was able to restrain it. Because it had the side of being a subordinate god, it naturally possessed divinity. Now, I finally understand. Noah turned his gaze to Gon Chi Dong Ma and suddenly smiled. One of your elders who live in seclusion, the true identity of the god of disobedience is Susanoo, right? Winterhorse Gonshi nodded with a bitter smile. Susanoo. In Japanese mythology, it was a very famous divinity. Speaking of Susanoo, Izanagi and Izanami must also be mentioned. Izanagi and Izanami were the father and mother gods in Japanese mythology. All the gods in Japanese mythology were created by these two gods in various ways or gave birth to their children. Susanoo was Izanagi's son. Susanoo's full name was Susanoo. He possessed many attributes and was known as the god of storm. He was also known as the god of destruction because of his violent nature. At the same time, he possessed the divinity of the god of earth. Later on, he became the god of conquest and the god of heroes because of various mythical deeds. This god could control storms and was also a user of steel. When this god was mentioned, it was impossible not to think of him as the most famous god in Japanese mythology. In order to save the girl who was sacrificed to the famous monster in Japanese mythology, Yamada no Orochi, Susanoo killed Yamada no Orochi and took a sword from its tail. That sword was the Kusanagi sword, also known as the Kusanagi sword. Since then, Susanoo became the hero who killed Yamada no Orochi, also known as the god of steel. The Kusanagi sword was later passed down in Japan and became a symbol of royalty because of its special status. In fact, in Noah's Gate of Babylon, the famous king's sword was also sleeping. That was why Noah understood that the pitch-black divine blade in front of him was not the real heavenly sword of clouds. However, from the fact that the sword was Susanoo's subordinate god, it was not an exaggeration to call it the real thing. After all, this sword was a subordinate god that Susanoo created based on his own legend in the myths. Unfortunately, although the sword had Susanoo's divine power, it did not have a symbol of royalty. That was because the Kusanagi sword had been passed down from Susanoo's hands to the next generation. In Noah's Gate of Babylon, the Kusanagi sword's ability was a symbol of royalty. It was the way of the king and the sword of the king. The sword in front of him was just a divine relic and a subordinate god that embodied Susanoo's power. Presumably, the sword's ability should be similar to Susanoo's authority, right? Susanoo, the conquering god of steel? Noah thought to himself. The sleeping strongest steel that Pandora mentioned shouldn't be that guy, right? With that in mind, Wanli-gu Yoli suddenly stepped forward with a face full of anger. He directly rushed in front of Noah and shouted loudly. Mr. Noah! What the hell are you doing? Huh? Noah was shocked. Noah was not the only one who was shocked. Even Kei-na and Kaneji Winterhorse were shocked. Wanli-gu did not notice at all and continued to shout angrily. Do you know what you've done? Do you know how much trouble you've brought to the people around you? Noah was a little confused. What have I done? You've done something that doesn't fit your status at all. Wanli-gu approached Noah with an extremely strong aura. You're a king. Since you're a king, you should think more about the people around you. I realize that you don't realize how much influence you have. Please reflect on yourself. Noah, who was shocked by Wanli-gu's strong aura, was stunned. He only realized it when he came back to his senses. Wanli-gu Yoli's pretty face was less than 10 centimeters away from his own face because her whole body was close to his. This made Noah feel a little uncomfortable and he laughed bitterly. Although I don't know what happened, it should be my experiment that affected you a little. If you want to lecture me, I'll listen to you properly later. So, calm down first. Your face is too close. Ah. Wanli Gu only noticed this now. Her pretty face turned red and she quickly moved away. She held her burning face and cried softly as if she was about to cry. What did I do? Only now did she feel embarrassed. Wasn't it a little too late? Noah couldn't help but laugh. At the same time, he felt that this innocent girl was quite cute. At this time, Hui Na and Ganshi Dongma finally reacted from the sudden situation. As expected of a king. Even Tian Songyan was defeated in an instant. Although the lack of a user was one of the reasons, when Tian Songyan showed his true strength, even I couldn't do anything. Hui Na said with a happy expression. A king's strength is actually so strong. That's too strong. Was it strong? However, Noah had only used one hand to send Tian Songyan flying. Let alone authority, he didn't even use magic or magic. Of course, Noah's body had taken possession of the Leo constellation's sun sovereign, making him invulnerable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to subdue Tian Songyan in a second. At the very least, he would have been able to fight for a few seconds. Thinking about this, Noah couldn't help but scratch his cheeks and shrug. Then, he looked at Hui Na. That's right, who are you? Hearing Noah's words, Hui Na finally remembered the purpose of her trip. Sorry, Hui Na forgot to introduce herself. Hui Na's gentle smile was comparable to that of a well-educated young miss. However, she didn't bow. Instead, she tilted her head and closed her eyes as she said this with a smile. I am Hui Na from Clear Autumn Courtyard. At the king's request, I came to become the king's follower, Witch Yuan. Please take care of me, my king. Chapter 1408. Qingxiu Courtyard. Noah looked at Keiko in surprise. Qingxiu Courtyard? Are you referring to that Qingxiu Courtyard? In Japan, there are 4 leading families in the world of Japanese magic. They were the Qingxiu Courtyard, the Jifuzuka Courtyard, the Lianqing Courtyard, and the Sayako Courtyard. These 4 families were the 4 ancient families that had served the emperor since ancient times. They had an extremely ancient history and noble origins. Today, the 4 families stood at the pinnacle of the entire Japanese spell world. Among them, the Sayako Courtyard was the core of the Official History Compilation Committee. The founder of the Official History Compilation Committee was the former head of the Sayako Courtyard. The Qingxiu Courtyard was a family that specialized in martial arts and political power. Once, the 4 families competed with each other for fame and fortune. In the end, the Sayako Courtyard won the battle. Therefore, the Official History Compilation Committee of Japan's spell world had the Sayako Courtyard as its core. Apart from the fact that the committee was founded by the Sayako Courtyard, this was also part of the reason. In view of this, the Sayako Courtyard, the Official History Compilation Committee, had the right to dispatch members of the other 3 families. Despite this, the Qingxiu Courtyard's political influence was also extraordinary. Even if they were dispatched by the Official History Compilation Committee, they were still the leader of the Japanese spell world. Even the core of the Official History Compilation Committee, the Sayako Courtyard, could not ignore their influence. That's right. Hui nodded with a naive expression that made it impossible for anyone to see through her. Keiko is the only daughter of the Qingxiu Courtyard. Everyone says that Keiko will inherit the Qingxiu Courtyard sooner or later, but it doesn't matter to Keiko whether she can inherit it or not. In addition, Keiko Courtyard was also a witch. Moreover, she was the head witch of the current generation. Since young, she worshipped Susanoo as a witch. She could listen to the voice of the gods and borrow the power of the gods. Susanoo even gave her the divine sword Tingyan. She was a genius in the Japanese spell world. This was Keiko Courtyard's Keiko Courtyard. Just like what Kaneko said, Keiko Courtyard's Keiko Courtyard was second to none in the world. Although she could only borrow a fraction of the power, this level of power was enough to put Keiko Courtyard above Erica and Liliana. If Erica and Liliana were the prodigies of the European magic world, then Keiko Courtyard was the prodigy of the Japanese spell world. Keiko Courtyard. Keiko Courtyards, Keiko Courtyard, Keiko Courtyard. Keiko Courtyards, Keiko Courtyard. Keiko Courtyard. In other words, the divine power you borrowed is Susanoo's power, right? Keiko said Keiko. Grandfather said that the king needs me, so he sent me to the king's side. No matter what the king wants to do to me, I have to obey. No matter what. Wanli Gu Yoli's pretty face turned red again. It was unknown whether or not he had thought of something wrong. Oh. Winterhorse Ganchi narrowed his eyes. Are you going to use this trick? Noah was also a little speechless, but then he suddenly smiled. He walked up to Keiko Courtyard and reached out his hand. Keiko Courtyard was stunned. He lifted the girl's chin. Then, if I ask you to deal with the god you worship, will you listen? This sentence made Keiko Courtyard and Keiko Courtyard's breathing stagnate at the same time. Keiko Courtyard was also a little stunned, but then she felt shy because the corner of Noah's mouth was slightly raised. Keiko Courtyard. If Keiko Courtyard will help you. From Keiko Courtyard's words, although she called Susanoo Keiko Courtyard, she didn't have any relationship with the god. But, that's true. Susanoo Courtyard was also a god. Even if one of the elders of the Japanese magic circle was living in seclusion in the hidden world, he would still point out the happenings in the modern world. So, he would probably only pay attention to matters related to gods and gods' layers, right? As a high and mighty god, building a relationship with ordinary humans was not an option for that guy at all. Keiko Courtyard called him Keiko Courtyard. Understanding this point, Noah somewhat understood what kind of position those elders living in seclusion in the secluded world played. Simply put, they were a group of people who took advantage of their seniority. Sure enough, no matter where one went, there would always be annoying people. Clang, 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 clang. At this time, Tian Songyun was still trembling. It kept rubbing against the chains that bound it tightly. The blade was also surging with a powerful curse power. It seemed like it was unwilling to accept this result. Everyone looked at Tian Songyun and then looked at each other. It looks like Tian Songyun still wants to fight, Hui Na said helplessly. Your Majesty, do you want to accompany it? Forget it. Noah let go of Hui Na's chin and said with a lack of interest. If it's only at the level of a subordinate god, then it's not even worth me taking it seriously. Besides, I also said that my body has the grace of invulnerability. That knife can't do anything to me at all. Plus, I promise to live here as an ordinary person as possible. So, I'll leave it to you. Hearing this, Wanli Gyuli cast a grateful look at Noah. Winterhorse Mandala said helplessly, even subordinate gods can't be serious? Should I say, as expected of the most terrifying god slayer? If that was the case. Only Hui Na sighed as if she was extremely troubled. Tian Songyun is usually very nice, but when he gets angry, even I can't do anything. Even if the king asked me to deal with him, I don't know what to do. Although she said that, Hui Na still walked towards Tian Songyun. No matter what, let's put Tian Songyun away first. After saying that, Hui Na extended her hand towards Tian Songyun, who was tightly bound. At this moment, Noah sensed something strange and frowned. His eyes hardened as he suddenly opened his mouth to speak. Be careful. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything. Hui Na's hand gripped the handle of Tian Songyun's knife tightly. At that moment, a surge of curse power surged out of Tian Songyun's blade. It turned into a dense darkness and surged in all directions like a tide. The speed at which the darkness spread was indescribably fast. However, Noah had already sensed that something was amiss long ago, so it was not difficult for him to avoid it. However, when he saw Wanli Gyuli and Hui Na being covered by the darkness, Noah clicked his tongue and relaxed his tense body, allowing the darkness to swallow him. Then, the feeling of the world spinning attacked Noah's body. When he came to his senses, Noah was already in an unknown forest. When Noah opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was an emerald green mountain. The smell of soil and trees was very strong. There was a small stream flowing by the side. However, it was raining cats and dogs, and the wind was howling as it blew across the entire world. Noah looked around, and it didn't take him long to find a small house. It was a Japanese-style wooden house that seemed to have appeared in ancient times. Looking at the small house, Noah narrowed his eyes slightly, lifted his foot, and walked in that direction without hesitation. Not long after, Noah arrived at the door of the house. Without any hesitation, Noah reached out and opened the door. In the next moment, a figure appeared in front of Noah. "You're finally here. It's so hard to see you." The person who said this was an old man sitting cross-legged in front of an old-fashioned fireplace. He was very tall and wore a rough kimono. Even through the cloth, one could still see the bulging muscles of the old man. He had a strong body that did not match his age. "I'm sorry. I used my family's witch in Tian Songyun as a medium to bring you here." The old man was not apologetic at all. "Anyway, come in first." Chapter 1409. Inside the wooden hut, the old man was holding a bottle of wine and was happily drinking from it. Noah did not pay any attention to the old man and instead looked to the side of the old man. Over there, Kusanagi, whose entire body was burning with curse energy, was stabbed into the ground, emitting a clear battle intent towards Noah. The divine sword that belonged to Susanoo had not given up on fighting Noah. It was different from Susanoo, who only became a steel after slaying dragons and snakes. Kusanagi was a subordinate god, and from the moment it was born, it existed in the form of a sword and a blade. It was the most primitive and purest steel god. As a steel god, every steel god was a god of war, and a god of war. Their thirst for battle was simply unimaginable to humans. As such, after experiencing Noah's incomparable power, as the purest steel, Kusanagi, as the purest steel, released such an unrelenting battle intent towards Noah. Unfortunately, to Noah, it would be a different story if his opponent was someone worthy of respect and pleasing to the eye. However, for someone like Kusanagi, who was inexplicably harassing him, Noah did not even want to pay attention to him. However, Tian Songyun did not attack Noah directly like he did at the beginning. Although he released a shocking battle intent towards Noah, he obediently stayed by the old man's side, not moving at all. Who could make a steel like Kusanagi, who was born to fight, suppress his instincts? Who else could it be other than the main god that he was loyal to? At this moment, Noah smirked and walked into the wooden hut. He sat down on the other side of the hut, but he did not look at the old man. Instead, he looked around as if he was observing something. "Since I am able to meet you face to face, that means this is the secluded world where you live in seclusion, right? Susanoo? Oh. Don't you understand the situation very well?" The old god named Susanoo grinned. "Although I've always wanted to meet you, it's a pity that going to the modern world would cause me all kinds of trouble. I can't use my own power to allow others to enter the hidden world as they please, so I can only rely on Tian Songyun and that girl Hui as a medium to bring you here. The supernatural beings that exist in myths are called gods. They only exist in myths, and the gods that jump out of myths and wander on the ground are the gods of disobedience." Noah looked at Susanoo with a smile. "Then, what are you?" "Me? I used to be a god of disobedience," Susanoo said casually, as if he didn't care at all. "After I appeared on the surface, I rampaged about for over 1,000 years. In the end, I got a little bored, so I decided to live in seclusion. In the end, I could only come to this realm between life and death. Life is the present world that can give life existence. Immortality is all kinds of myths and legends. The gods that only exist in myths and legends jumped out of the realm of immortality and came to the world of life, and became disobedient gods. When disobedient gods are defeated, they will return to the realm of immortality. However, a god like Susanoo, who used to be a disobedient god and got tired of his life as a disobedient god, and no one could defeat him, so where should he go? Naturally, he could only come to the hidden world to live in seclusion. Because the hidden world is the hidden world, this world is between the modern world, which represents life, and the mythical world, which represents immortality. In other words, this secluded world is a gathering place for those who are neither human nor god. Especially now, those who are gathered here are people who can't let go of their attachment to the modern world. Including me, there are many things in the modern world that I can't be at ease with. Susanoo, while holding a bottle of wine and drinking it with a forthright attitude, intentionally or unintentionally mentioned it. Well, to put it simply, a group of old men who supervise the young people. In order to prevent the young people in the modern world from acting recklessly, it is our duty to remind them. Sometimes, when there are characters that the young people can't deal with, it is also our duty to come out and say a few words. What he meant was that Noah's existence forced him to come out and say a few words. However, Noah snorted at this saying. You don't have to say so many nice words, it's not the first time I have dealt with gods like you. Even if I am no longer a disobedient god, as long as I am a god, my mission is more important than anything else. As he said that, Noah spoke as if he was referring to something else. In the end, you can't be saying that as a god, you are actually very concerned about the safety of humans, so you couldn't help but jump out and talk to me, right? Ha 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 ha. Susanoo suddenly burst into laughter. Although I also want to say that, as you said, the death of one or two humans may be a little insignificant for a god, but it also depends on the situation. Take me for example, if there is a monster like Yamada no Orochi that is endangering humans, even if there is only one human being who is about to be reduced to food, I will still save her. Thanks to this, I was able to win the heart of a beautiful woman. Sure enough, even a god has to often do good deeds. In the myth, in order to save Kita no Orochi, who was reduced to a sacrifice, Susanoo killed the snake monster and obtained the Kusanagi sword, and from then on, became the conquering god of steel. After that, the rescued Kita in Anaheim became friends with Susanoo, and the two of them got married, creating a beautiful story. When Susanoo said that he won the heart of a beautiful woman, it was indeed such a thing. Unfortunately, I am no longer that impulsive age. The task of saving the little girl will be handed over to you young men. Susanoo looked at Noah with a profound look. Isn't that the reason why you were pulled here by me willingly? Then it's easy to say. Noah raised his eyes and looked at Susanoo's eyes, then said lightly. Where is the Wanli Valley and the Qingqiu courtyard now? Don't tell me you don't know. However, the one who answered this question was not Susanoo, but another voice. The foreign god killer king, the girls you are looking for are now here. This was a very clear and beautiful voice. Accompanied by such a voice, a figure suddenly appeared without any warning on the side of the stove where Noah and Susanoo were sitting opposite each other. It was an extremely beautiful woman. The clothes she was wearing seemed to be a noble princess costume during the Heian period, with bright colors, known as the 12-style kimono. Her pupils were a clear glass color, and she had long brown hair that reached her waist. Her skin was smooth and delicate like ivory. The woman had a beautiful face that seemed to be carefully carved. Her beauty was far superior to that of modern humans, giving people the feeling that she was a princess that only appeared in ancient times. Such a beautiful woman took out 3 pieces of red tomo from her long sleeve and held it in front of Noah. The hidden world is a world where the difference between reality and illusion is very ambiguous, but it is also a world where the mind is superior to the body. As long as you want to, you can instantly teleport, and as long as you want to, you can change the world. This kind of unrealistic world is very difficult for human beings to adapt to, and if you don't do anything about it, you may not even be able to keep your life. Therefore, I turned the people who came with you into dead objects to prevent this side effect. I hope you can understand." Hearing this, Noah felt relieved that a beautiful woman like a princess suddenly appeared without him noticing, but he reached out his hand and silently took the 3 tomo. At this time, another hoarse voice sounded. "I didn't expect that one of the most powerful god killers would jump into the hidden world for a few humans." As soon as he finished speaking, another person silently appeared in the small house and sat on the last empty seat around the stove. This was a monk wearing black monk robes. His skin was very dry, as if he had no real flesh, like a mummy. "Okay, everyone is here." Susanoo put the wine bottle in his hand on the ground, looked at Noah, and smiled ferociously. "Then, let's begin the negotiations. God Killer." Chapter 14:10. Negotiate? Susanoo's words made Noah look around. He glanced at Susanoo, the princess, and the monk, and finally fixed his eyes on Susanoo. "I think that what should be said to you clearly. What's the point of negotiating?" Noah's words made Tyrant's mouth twitch. Tyrant's words were like thorns in his voice. "You talk big. Should I say that you're worthy of being a godslayer? That's enough. Sir, and master, we're here to talk to the king. You're being rude. It's against the rules of the conversation." The princess frowned slightly. "Please be a little more careful. It's not good for us to become enemies with the king of a foreign country." Unfortunately, both Susanoo and Tyrant ignored the princess's words. One of them continued to drink, while the other shook his head, looking like a rebel. It had to be said that seeing these two people, no one would have any good impression of them. However, perhaps the two of them had such an attitude because of their self-confidence. Susanoo was a mythical god. Even if he was no longer a god of disobedience, he still had great divine power. It was estimated that in terms of strength, he was not inferior to the highest-level gods like Welslana and Mercado. As for the monk's words, Noah could clearly sense that he was not a god. However, this was a world where transcendental beings who were neither human nor god gathered. The monk in front of him was obviously not a human either. Coupled with the monk's dress, Noah felt that the monk should be a transcendent being who had cultivated his body to become a Buddha. Even if he was inferior to the god and the godslayer, he was still a figure that humans could not reach. As for the beautiful princess, Noah almost saw through her identity at first glance. God Ancestor. She was a fallen goddess of earth. Although she was no longer a god, she was still an existence that transcended human beings. Noah, who had confronted the god ancestor Ganivia, sensed a trace of the same aura from the princess. Therefore, the princess was very likely to be a god ancestor who had existed even longer than Ganivia. A god. A Buddha. A god ancestor. 3 transcendental beings. Except for the princess, who was a god ancestor, Susanoo and the monk were so rude because of their confidence. However, when it came to confidence, Noah was not lacking in it. It was because Noah knew exactly how much power he had at the moment. When using 2 avatars, Noah's full strength could reach 3 digits of box tings. The gods and godslayers in this world were between 4 and 5 digits. The highest was only 4 digits. Susanoo, the monk, and the god ancestor, the strongest one should be Susanoo, who had wreaked havoc in the world as the god of disobedience for more than 1,000 years. However, Susanoo's strength was probably at the middle of the 4-digit range, not the top, let alone the 3-digit range. For Noah, Susanoo was not a threat. Of course, Noah's authority was still in the process of adapting and could not be used casually. Even so, with Noah's current power, he could reach 4 digits. Coupled with the sun's sovereign and many precious artifacts, his combat power was definitely not inferior to Susanoo. If he really fought with Susanoo, Noah was absolutely confident that he could win. As for the reason why, it was simply because Noah had a trump card that could restrain the gods. Clang! With a crisp sound of collision, a long spear suddenly appeared in Noah's hand without any warning. Noah stabbed the spear into the ground. Susanoo, the monk, and the princess were shocked. They all looked at the source of the sound. Then their pupils suddenly shrank, and their faces became dignified. Buzz! In the slight trembling sound, the red spear with a forked tip emitted an ancient and sacred aura, filling the whole space. Putting the monk and the princess aside, Susanoo could clearly feel it. The aura emitted from the strangely shaped spear made the heart of the famous hero god in Japanese mythology surge with unprecedented warning signs. Susanoo had never felt such a sense of danger for thousands of years. The keen intuition of a god told Susanoo. The spear was dangerous. Very dangerous. Buzz, 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 buzz. At the same time, the kusanagi that was stabbed into the ground next to Susanoo began to tremble violently. The incantation power that surrounded it became chaotic and violent. It was similar to Susanoo. As Susanoo's god follower, the kusanagi also felt a threat that it had never felt before from the strangely shaped spear. That kind of threat was like an innate instinct that was being suppressed. It was extremely strong. Don't you have something interesting? Susanoo's playful expression gradually disappeared as he looked straight at Noah. Is that a type of god relic? It's not an exaggeration to say that in this world. However, it's different from your broken sword. Mine is the real deal. Noah met Susanoo's gaze and smirked. I just want to say that there's a limit to my patience. You can challenge me if you want. If you want to fight, I'll take you on any time. However, if you've asked me to come here just to see you guys put on airs, after saying this, Noah suddenly reached out his hand and grabbed the monk's collar. He pulled the monk in front of him and stared coldly at the monk's shriveled face that was like a mummy's. Let's fight then. I don't have time to waste on people like you who like to play games. You. The monk's shriveled face was contorted in anger. Susanoo's face turned grim as well. He was no longer as carefree as he was just now. At this moment, Susanoo and the monk finally realized what was going on. The person in front of them seemed rational, but it did not mean that he was not impulsive. He had killed 2 of the highest level gods when he first appeared. He had defeated 3 of his kind as soon as he became a god slayer. It would be unbelievable if he did not have a temper. Noah was adjusting his style based on the situation and the person. He could do anything to those who he could get along with. However, he could be stubborn to those who he could not get along with. If they were unhappy, they could fight him. It was such a crude principle. Rakshasa king from a foreign country, please calm down, the princess said immediately when she snapped back to her senses. We don't mean any harm. Just because we don't mean any harm, it doesn't mean that we won't be enemies. Otherwise, why would the relationship between a god slayer and a god of disobedience be so complicated? Noah pushed the monk who was glaring at him away. He glanced at Susanoo who was gloomy and then looked at the princess. I'm sorry. I don't get along with these 2 fellas. I don't hate you, so I'll let you do the talking. As for you. Noah glanced at Susanoo and the monk. Shut up and watch, don't make me angry. The impolite words made Susanoo and Tyrant's face turn ugly. What? Susanoo smiled rudely, but there was no smile in his eyes. Aren't you very capable? In the myths, Susanoo was famous for his violent temperament, so he was responsible for controlling the violent storms. He was also known as the god of destruction. Although Susanoo had been wandering for thousands of years, it didn't mean that he had lost his temper after thousands of years. Now, Susanoo was obviously angry. However, looking at Susanoo in such a state, Noah only smiled suddenly. He reached out his hand and placed it on the strangely shaped crimson spear beside him. Then, he slowly pulled it out. Susanoo suddenly became vigilant. A terrible idea finally emerged in Tyrant's mind. The princess could no longer maintain her elegance, and her face was full of anxiety. In such a situation, Noah slowly stood up and said to himself. It seems that before we talk, it is necessary to let you understand the difference between the primary and secondary. After that, Noah pointed the spear in his hand at Susanoo and sneered. Go outside. Susanoo narrowed his eyes, and his body burned with surging curse power. Interesting, isn't it? The battle was about to start. Chapter 14:11. Secluded world, also known as the realm of life and undying, was a very mysterious world. Not only was the boundary between reality and illusion very ambiguous, but it also allowed people to do many inconceivable things just by thinking about it. It was also a world where the mind was superior to the body. With just a thought, anyone could teleport. However, teleportation could only be done in different spaces. Secluded world was actually not a world with only one space, but a wonderful world formed by combining many different spaces. For example, secluded world could be considered a building, and the spaces in secluded world were the rooms in the building. Although all the rooms were in the same building, they were separated by walls. This was how secluded world existed. It was a world made up of multiple isolated spaces. This was secluded world. It was because this world was formed by many different spaces that it could allow those existences to live in it. For example, the god of disobedience. Just by appearing, he would bring about phenomena related to his own attributes. If the god of fire descended, everything around him would become incomparably hot. If the god of sea descended, a tsunami comparable to the end of the world would descend along with it. For these kinds of existences, as long as they chose to live in seclusion in secluded world, they would only affect the space they were in, and would not affect other spaces. Therefore, under normal circumstances, if there was no reason, the existences in secluded world would not go to other spaces of their own kind. Pandora was the same. The goddess, who was the birth mother of the god Slayer, lived in this realm of life and undying, and stayed in a space that was difficult for ordinary people to go to. Generally speaking, although the spaces in secluded world were separated from each other, there was still a trace of connection between the spaces in secluded world, making each space in secluded world like a spider web. Therefore, in this world where the mind was superior to the body, people could rely on their imagination to let their bodies pass through these spider web-like connections, and instantly teleport to other spaces. However, it was said that Pandora's space was not so easy to reach. As for the specific reason, Noah did not know. This was the first time he had come to this world with his real body, so he did not know the specific situation. Of course, Noah could still calmly exist in this world. The princess had said that most people would find it difficult to adapt to the secluded world. If he did not use some special methods, even if he came to the secluded world, he would collapse due to excessive discomfort and eventually lose his life. However, the god Slayer had an extremely tenacious life force. This world itself would not reject Noah's existence. No matter how long Noah stayed here, there would not be any side effects. Under such circumstances, the group of people came out of the wooden house and came to the open space by the riverbank. Walala. The heavy downpour was mixed with the storm, wreaking havoc in the surroundings. Noah and Susanoo stood facing each other, separated from each other by a certain distance. At the side, Tyrant and Princess stood side by side. When they saw this scene, their expressions were completely different. The monk's face was filled with schadenfreude and mockery. The princess looked worried and restless. Why did things turn out this way? The princess sighed slightly and glanced at the monk. I think the sorcerer should be very clear about the reason, right? If not for Susanoo and the monk's arrogant and sloppy attitude, which was simply looking for trouble and provocation, things would not have turned out this way. However, the monk did not have the slightest self-awareness. No. It should be said that the monk had the self-awareness, but he did not look like he was reflecting at all. Isn't this good? The monk sneered. Let the old mister teach that ridiculously young foreign king a good lesson. It will be good for the following conversation, won't it? Then, what if it's the other way around? The princess retorted. What if the old mister loses to the Rakshasa king in the end? That's impossible. the monk said without hesitation. Gods and godslayers, if it was that easy to determine the winner, there wouldn't only be 7 demon kings in this world. Even if that kid killed 2 gods at the same time to become a godslayer, and defeated 3 of his kind at the same time, and praised him to the heavens, if he wants to defeat a god, it's useless to rely on such a superficial difference in combat strength. Whether it was a god slayer or a disobedient god, they could not be judged by common sense. The simplest example was that if a god and a human were to fight, no one would think that the latter would win. However, some humans stood out and miraculously killed a god, which led to the birth of a god slayer. Therefore, if one were to judge the outcome of a battle between a god slayer and a god based solely on the difference in combat strength, the result would often be shocking. Let's not talk about other things. In the past, when Noah succeeded in becoming a god slayer, during the 3 months he was active in Italy, he also met many gods. However, because of the god's tenacious vitality, he did not succeed in killing the 3rd disobedient god and obtaining new power. From this point of view, the monk's words were undoubtedly correct. The princess also agreed with this statement. However, that was under normal circumstances. The princess could not help but look at the strangely shaped spear in Noah's hand, which exuded an extremely sacred and ancient aura. As a god ancestor, the princess's sharp spiritual sense told her that spear was very likely to subvert this common sense. Otherwise, Noah would not have so easily started a fight with Susanu. Under the gaze of the princess and the monk, Noah, who was in the middle of the storm, was completely drenched, holding the strangely shaped spear in his hand and looking forward. There, Susanu was also holding the Kusanagi sword tightly, looking at Noah with a ferocious and ruthless expression, grinning, showing the violent temperament of the god of destruction and the god of conquest side to the fullest. Are you ready, boy? What? Noah raised the spear in his hand and pointed at Susanu. Don't tell me you want me to respect you and let you have 3 moves first. No, I just want to tell you one thing. Susanu's rock-hard face showed a happy expression. I haven't had a decent fight for a long time. Don't let me down, the youngest godslayer. As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of fierce curse power burst out from Susanu's body, turning into a flame-like flame that slowly burned and covered Susanu's whole body. Seeing this, Noah curled his lips and smiled. The energy in the energy source in his body was instantly converted into magic power and poured into the spear in his hand, causing the surging magic power to swell. The 2 violent curses suddenly turned into a raging wind, which shook Noah and Susanu, respectively, dispersing the surrounding storm. Whoosh! The next moment, 2 figures, also wrapped in a powerful spell, shot out like arrows almost at the same time. They were so fast that even the princess and the monk could only see 2 vague shadows. Then, the 2 figures, like meteorites, with an indescribable impact, fiercely collided with each other in a very shocking way. Ding! When the 2 vague figures collided with each other, the moment they passed each other, a crisp sound of collision shook the air. That was the sound of the sharp spear thrusting out like lightning, but it was blocked by the divine sword like a heavy shield, causing sparks to fly everywhere, and a small circle of energy ripples stirred up the sound of sparks. Did you beat me to it? Susanu laughed out loud. Then it's my turn. While speaking, Susanu raised the Tian Songyun in his hand directly above his head and slashed down at Noah in front of him. Swoosh! On the pitch-black divine blade, a strong gust of wind tore the air apart. The sharp sound of the wind breaking was heard, which made people's eardrums tingle. Facing this fierce slash, Noah's eyes flashed, and relying on his amazing arm strength, he fiercely swung the red spear from the bottom to the top. Clang! A bell-like sound reverberated in the air, setting off a strong wind that rushed in all directions, causing cracks to appear on the ground where Noah and Susanu were standing. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.